To order our board meeting of the Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Directors on Monday, March 8th at 7:04 p.m. If everyone will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. For board members, I am leading board book here. And we are going to start our meeting off with, we have our Social Workers Month. And I believe Director Aganaga is going to read a proclamation for us.
I am having problems again with my board book. So I'm trying to log in on my iPad as well. Would you mind doing that, Madam Chair?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I can do that.
Thanks.
Okay. Let me see here. So we have a proclamation we wanted to read recognizing National Social Workers Month for the Greater Albany Public Schools Board of Education. The proclamation number is 2020-21-5. Whereas the social work profession for decades has been dedicated to improving human well-being and enhancing the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable among us. Whereas this year's Social Worker Month theme, Social Workers Are Essential, embodies the heroic contributions of the social work profession to our nation, including the work social workers have done to heal our nation during these times of pandemic, social unrest, economic uncertainty, and political diversiveness. Whereas social workers have always been present in times of crisis, helping people overcome issues such as death and grief, and helping people and communities recover from natural disasters such as fires, hurricanes, and earthquakes. Whereas social workers have helped this nation live up to its values by successfully advocating for equal rights for all people, no matter their race, sexual identity, gender expression, culture, or religion. Whereas the social work profession is one of the fastest growing professions in the United States, with nearly 800,000 people expected to be employed as social workers by 2028. Whereas social workers work in all parts of our society to empower people to live to their fullest potential. Whereas school social workers have worked with families and school throughout the pandemic to ensure students receive their full academic and personal potential. Whereas social workers play a crucial role in our nation's healthcare system and have played a key role in this nation's response to COVID-19 and helping individuals, families, and communities cope with the epidemic. Whereas social workers for generations have advocated for positive changes that have made our society a better place to live, including urging policymakers to adopt the minimum wage, improve workplace safety, and enact social safety net programs that help ameliorate hunger, homelessness, and poverty. Whereas social workers are one of the largest groups of mental health care providers in the United States and work daily to help people, whether in person or remotely, overcome substance use disorders and mental illness, such as depression and anxiety. Whereas social workers will continue to stand ready to assist our nation in overcoming present and future challenges, including pushing for racial equity, ending gun violence, improving healthcare and mental health care for all, and urging lawmakers to adopt immigration reforms. Now, therefore, in recognition of the numerous contributions made by America's social workers and our own very own FACT team, we proclaim the month of March 2021 as National Social Work Month and call upon all citizens to join the National Association of Social Workers and the Greater Albany School District in celebration and support of the social work profession, adopted this 8th day of March, 2021. All right. thank you to all of our social worker folks in the district and outside of the district for all the work you've been doing. It's been um, always an important piece of our work, and we appreciate you very much. And especially in a year that like what we've had, it's been even a larger need, and we appreciate all the work you're doing greatly. All right. We are moving on to a little bit of discussion about in-person school board meetings. I'm gonna pull up a few things here. And while I'm getting these up there, we had a discussion recently with looking into the OSBA, which is the Oregon School Board Association board meeting guidance. And on September 1st, 2020, the governor issued the executive order, which rescinded the previous executive order, which required public bodies to hold public meetings and hearings by telephone, video, or electronic and virtual means whenever possible. While it is permissible for school boards to meet in person, which was signed by the governor on June 30th of 2020, it allows public bodies to hold public meetings virtually as well. The OSBA right now is strongly recommending that boards continue to meet virtually. This was as of a week ago when I checked in with them. We can choose to return to in-person meetings, but those meetings, obviously, like everything else, must be maintained with appropriate social distancing of 6 or more feet between individuals whenever possible, and all of the other related compliances with the Oregon Health Authority. So we have been talking about moving to the possibility of re-engaging in our in-person meetings. And we just wanted to put that out there that we still are under a strong recommendation by OSBA that we continue to meet virtually. But I think we are going to try to consider some options to be able to meet in person. Again, I want to just kind of remind folks of what our meetings have been in the past. And we have always met at the district office. And although those meetings do have attendance by other folks, they are not necessarily what I would consider open meetings as far as discussion goes. So these are board discussion meetings, and we do allow for public comment, and the public comment comes in the form of a request the evening of, and then we have a certain portion of time in those meetings where those public comments are read. The board does not engage in discussion back and forth during the board meetings for any of that public comment. That has not changed since we've been meeting virtually. We still are receiving our public comments, and we are still reading those, just doing that on behalf of the person who has submitted it. We do not pick and choose what is presented. We present all, we read all that come in. The only exception to that would be an exception we would have made in person, which is if anything is not following proper guidelines that we have set out in board policies and our public complaint policies. And that is just that we won't hear complaints in a meeting, even as public comment, that are directed around a specific individual or person in the district. Those we ask that people follow our policy KLAR for those, which is how you can file formal complaints. So aside from that, I just wanted to mention that that's kind of been our process. We have seen actually, since we've been virtual, an increase in the amount of participation to our recorded sessions. So many more people tuning into our board meetings, which we appreciate. And I think that the fact that we are not in person has not changed the way in which we interact, with the exception of possibly being able to see one another a little bit more. So we are looking at moving forward with trying to see about doing some in-person meetings, also starting in April. But we are doing a little bit of negotiation about how we want that to look as far as attendance and our ability to maintain the requested and required guidelines. So that's just a little bit about the in-person board meetings and where we're looking to go. Director Ward, I see you had your hand up. Nope. No? Okay. She changed her mind. I just have to remove her hand now. Not sure why you can't remove your own hand or take it back down if you don't want to have it up. But were there any other comments or questions from board members at this point? Yes, Vice Chair Thompson, go ahead.
No, not just to, when I saw this come through, I just want to enthusiastically endorse the idea. I'm ready. I'm ready to go back to in-person meetings. I realize it would necessitate perhaps a smaller staff that meets with us. Definitely a smaller community of availability. But I'm ready to go back into, and not just for school board. My PTA hasn't met for a year. I haven't met. There's so many meetings, that regular meetings in the community that have become virtual, that I'm ready to meet. And I don't even like all of you, but I'm ready to talk to people in person. I'm ready to have that kind of cross talk that doesn't really happen in virtual meetings. But so I'm not setting a timeline for it, but I think we're getting closer, and we can see the opening of schools, and so I think it's time for us to go back to meeting in person.
Agreed. Are there any other comments or questions about board meetings, future of? We've had some great statistics shared with us about the number of, public comments we've received. We actually received more public comments this way than we have sometimes when people are in person. I think that's just from the nature of people can't always attend the meetings in person. And when we were only allowing for public comment to be submitted in person, you had to physically be there to sign up. I think we've had more people be able to share their thoughts and concerns with us electronically and remotely. And so we've been able to see an increase in those. And so I think that's a good thing. And like everything else, I think that we will continue to have discussions about how we go about holding our meetings long-term based on some of the changes that the pandemic has brought around with our technology changes and our ability to do both in person and online. So Director Ward.
I changed my mind again. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But I agree with Vice Chair Thompson. I'm personally ready to come back, and I think as a board, it's time for us to come back. But as you pointed out, some good things have come from this format, and I hope that we won't lose those as we transition back to in-person meetings. And one is the participation. Hi, everybody out there that are joining us virtually, and I hope that we will still enable you to do that. And the fact that, and also allow public comment to come to us that way as well, because it just facilitates engagement with the public.
Thank you. Any other questions? I know we'll have more discussion probably at our next board meeting. We've talked about having some presentations from district staff about what those meetings might entail as far as coordination on their end and how we want to facilitate those so that we can talk about what options we would like to see. So what I would ask of board members right now is just to go ahead and share your thoughts on the board meetings and things you would like us to consider. Send those to Superintendent Goff and/or Assistant Superintendent Harlan, and they will kind of gather those and work with staff and then present some information to us at one of our next board meetings for how we move forward with those. Any questions? Nothing? Okay. That is going to move us into our superintendent comments for the evening. So Superintendent Goff, I think you are up.
And with that, thank you, Chair Butzner. My mouse stopped working, so I'll navigate just a little more slowly. So I just wanted to start out. I'm going to cover a couple different pieces with you tonight, and wanted to start out by giving you information, because we have received this question from you all regarding the public comment participation. And so I thought it would be maybe helpful for you to see the actual image of what that looks like. So for what is really easy for us to measure is the year pre-pandemic and the year post-pandemic. And so we've looked at that in two ways. There are really two ways that the public right now participates in school board meetings. One is through the actual public comment process, which has changed, by the way. So it's not just that we're not in person, but it's that when we are in person, the public speaker is actually speaking to the board. And in this case, they are public comments are written and submitted. So that definitely changes how that interaction looks. But we have a 32% increase in public comments over the course of that time period, which is nice to see, However, where the big difference is in engagement is here, which is the overall board meeting views. So we have the public sign in. When you come to a school board meeting, you sign in when you're in person. And one of the things that YouTube and Facebook do as well is they kind of they have you sign in. They take track of who you are when you log into to views. And so we are able to see this really big difference in board meeting views through the year prior to the pandemic and this year during the pandemic. And I think this is one of those pieces that I wanted to talk about in the superintendent's report, to emphasize that we really do have this opportunity as we move forward to have conversations that happen in the public eye, even when we are back in the district office in a much less public setting than we've actually been in the last year. So since we've moved to these virtual meetings, we have had a much more public format for your board meetings, and we don't have to lose that just because we move back into the boardroom. So we are looking at the technologies that we can use in order to continue to simulcast board meetings for the public to view. And I am excited that we're going to be able to do that. And I think all of you as board members have really appreciated knowing that you have a lot more public engagement, which is great. And we definitely want to continue that. You will need to decide for yourselves what public comment looks like as you move forward. But I wanted you to know that we still intend to do the casting. So that should really be helpful. There are a few pieces that I want to emphasize from my superintendent's report. And then I just would like to share with you information regarding athletics, because we've had a lot of conversations questions this week about athletics. And we've also had a lot of questions related to, hold on, I was following the leader and I'm wondering if I might be in the wrong meeting now. Just a minute. Yep. Hang on just a second. Got it. As we talk about athletics and academics and the returns, one of the things that we know that happened this week is the governor made a big announcement on Friday, which changed, may change some things, hasn't dramatically changed a lot of things yet, but we want to talk a little bit about that since that happened after the time that we submitted the superintendent's report. So a couple quick highlights. I wanted to make sure that folks know that we have hired as our Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Russ Bettram, who is on this call. We are really excited to have Russ in this role. He's already been a huge asset to us. He comes to us from so far away as the Director of Transportation. So he has taken a small walk across the district and now shares a wall with Executive Director Larry. And I hear they can hear each other from each other's offices. So that's fascinating, just kind of in a Snoopy sort of way, like wah, wah, wah. I also wanted to let the board know that I'm excited that Principal Julia Bradley, who is the Central and Tahkeena principal, has received a $5,000 anonymous donation to support upgrading their playground facility. She and I talked about that this last week. I was able to go out and visit the playground and take a look, and we are working on updating that equipment using grant funds to do so. So that won't be ready by the time elementary students start back at the end of this month, but we are really excited to be able to get that in place as soon as we can. We also have a student forum that's coming up on the 17th, on March 17th, and that's our first student forum. We're really gearing it towards upper, middle, and high school students, and it is in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. So we're hoping that students don't have conflicts and can join, and it would be great to have a couple student board members leading the way to encourage their attendance. That would be great. And I saw S. Brown's already give the thumbs up, which puts the peer pressure on you, LJ. And congratulations, LJ, because I hear that they're also congratulations to you for winning your election, and that's pretty exciting. So not surprised that the two of you next year will continue to be in important leadership roles. Well done. That's really exciting. And then I want to go on to talk a little bit about the governor's decision, which was news to us on Friday. We received the information from the governor's office just before that information was shared on the media. And by just before, I mean within 30 minutes. And there's promise to what the governor has shared. So that's exciting. The challenge is that the timeline that the governor put in place has created some questions for folks. And there was just a little bit of a lack of clarity in how it was communicated. And so one thing that I want you as board members to understand is that the governor is not expecting all students to be in school during a certain timeline. The governor is, however, expecting that all students have the option to go back to school, elementary students by the week of March 29th and secondary students by the week of April 19th. She did not say full time and every day, and that's partly because we still have these the social distancing risks that are in place and expectations that are in place that actually don't allow us to have students seated so close together. And that then creates this difficulty. You have to have AM and PM shifts or every other day shifts. And so what sounds simple is complex, and we are still waiting for the Department of Education and the Oregon Health Authority to come out with their next set of recommendations based on the directive from the governor, and they won't have those tests till the 19th. So I want you as board members to know that on the 17th of this month, we will hear an update from the Department of Education regarding graduation. And on the 19th of this month, we will hear an update from the Department of Education regarding the directive from the governor's office. We may hear earlier, but by the 19th, they have to have information. So wanted to make sure you were updated on that. We will be talking a little bit more about some of the impact from the governor's statement on our potentially on calendar. So we had one calendar option for you to consider tonight that Executive Director Larry will talk with you about later. Because of the governor's announcement, we actually will have two to put before you for your consideration tonight. And we are going to ask you as board members to select between the two options that we present to you then. So finally, I wanted to speak with you about athletics. When we began this school year, we were under expectations with Ready Schools Safe Learners to consider both Benton and, well, the counties where we have more than 10% of our students or staff, where we draw from more than 10% of students or staff from, we needed to consider both of those counties for academics. When we looked at athletics and activities, Oregon Health Authority and OSAA, who oversees athletics and activities, they didn't address the issue of what if you actually have students who reside in more than one county. What do you do? They just were silent on that. So we referred to the RSSL guidance, which from the beginning of the year required that you consider both counties up until January 19th. Well, by the time we hit January 19th, we as a district had already decided and made an announcement that those pieces that were required for safety, we would continue to adhere to through the course of metrics dictating what we were able to do with our students. And so, but on January 19th, the state backed that down from a required to a recommended piece. It's important to you as we talk about athletics, because it's the only place when we're talking about athletics that we are at all tied to the Ready School Safe Learners guidance. In all other aspects for athletics, you're looking at, you are looking at Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon State Athletics and Activities Association guidelines and expectations. The other piece is that, so the other piece we find ourselves in now is that we have had a situation where we're fortunate to have Lynn County in good shape, right? We're in the moderate risk level. Benton County is unfortunately in the high risk, but we're getting better in Benton County. Things are looking much better there. And I'm saying that because I want you to have the context of that as I read to you the athletics and attendance update that is provided, that we have been working on over the last few days. And I want to thank Russ Buttram for his leadership on this with our athletic directors.
I wanted to make one point of clarification, Superintendent Goff. The Ready School Safe Learners requirement of taking both counties into effect, it moved from requirement to recommendation in February, not January.
Okay, so I'm hoping that you can see. So I'm just going to read this aloud. Greater Albany Public Schools and our larger community share the goal of returning as many students as possible to athletics and activities consistent with the guidance from the Oregon Health Authority, the Oregon School Activities Association, and then the RSSL, which I mentioned earlier and talked about how that was tied in here. That is dependent upon our local public health and county risk levels. Within this guidance, GAPS will strive to have as many students as possible participating in as many activities as possible. We're really trying to have a student-centered focus in all of the work that we're doing. So today's movement of Benton County from extreme risk to high risk provides an opportunity to get a bit closer to normal. After maximizing student athlete and student participation performances, we know our students, parents, and community want to return to watching these events as soon as it is safe to do so. To that end, we have developed a plan that prioritizes student competition and performance, spectators from the immediate family of athletes and performers, additional members of the student body, and then general admission of additional spectators in that order. An area of concern for our community has been the limiting of spectators from the fence line at some of our venues, especially where the fence rests on the line between school and city property. GAPS initially interpreted the guidance the same way many of our community members have. We intended to provide signs cautioning members of the public to socially distance and allow individual members of the public to make individual risk assessments. OSAA published a memo, however, that specifically including these spectators in the venue capacity limits, which meant we needed to, if you're standing outside the fence line viewing a football game, for example, we needed to count you as part of the venue capacity. We share this distinction to highlight the fact that there are several regulatory agencies involved in our decisions, and each provides guidance and later clarification. GAPS is continuously reassessing our practices to ensure we're aligned with the most recent, most current information. This document will provide a link when we mail it out to families to our current assessment of the overlapping guidance and the potential for spectators at each risk level. It will also highlight the priorities above and describes the process we will use to bring spectators back to events. That document that we'll include is a spreadsheet that is pretty, it's pretty detailed, and I'm afraid we'll raise, it looks like that. But it's real clear when you look at it, you pick your sport. This top line here says football, if you could read it, and you go across and it tells you about how many of each group can be allowed in based on those guidelines. For events going forward, the athletic directors, Okay, for events going forward, the athletic directors and coaches will estimate the student participation for each event, and they're going to allocate passes via their athletes or the performers. So for parents who have questions about how passes were allocated, or students who do for a single event, they would just contact the school's athletic director and they should be able to explain that. And so I wanted to be sure and share that with you tonight, because we sit at a moment where we are preparing to communicate this athletics information out to families. And I wanted to present it as part of the board report in case you as board members had different considerations that you want to make regarding considering Benton and Linn counties both as part of the athletics and activities decisions when we're looking at risk levels. Because it used to be required but is now recommended by RSSL, it certainly gives board members the option to instead of continuing as we have with those two linked together, to consider for athletics and activities simply looking only at Linn County rather than both counties. But because that would be a change from what we have discussed in the past, I think it's important to bring to you as board members. And I know Executive Director Buttram, I probably left things out, but I'm hoping that gave an overview.
I think you hit most of the points, not specific to the Linn and Benton piece, but the one piece I would highlight to folks as I pulled these numbers together is just to recognize that at the venue capacities, they fill up faster than people kind of assume that they will. You know, the football team, for example, that we are fielding is not as big as the football team we would like to field. And so when you prioritize students on football specifically, you keep the venue full for quite a while until the risk levels come down to the lower risk level. Additionally, it's important to understand that as we prioritize students, and you look at the list that I provided where we did the number crunching, the goal would be to add additional student performances to a venue, like bringing in sideline cheerleaders or a dance or band, in order to maximize the capacity of the venue. And so when you do that, there's a fairly limited capacity for spectators. And I think it's just important that we're honest and upfront with people, because they're going to want to come to these events, that we're prioritizing the student competition and performance ahead of spectators.
Thank you for that addition, Russ. I do want to bring some information to the board members based on some conversations that I had today that now bounce off of what Superintendent Goff and Director Buttram have presented. And that is that I believe we have an opportunity here to say, based on the way the athletics and activities pieces have been identified, and the fact that we can separate them out potentially from the same requirements that we have for the education side of things, and the fact that we want to try to get as many of our students back to their normal activities as possible. I'd like to recommend to the board that we tonight consider making an exception and voting on having us look at or directing our administration in the district office to look solely at the Lynn County assessments as far as where we are from a risk perspective. And as we all know, we're at the moderate risk level, and that we consider that for all of our decisions we make going forward for the athletics and activities. Doing that will allow us to get a majority of those students participating again in their activities. I think what Director Buttram was just mentioning is the fact that in most cases, the numbers allow for more. So for example, if we do that and take into account the moderate risk level, we are then only looking at OSAA and OHA for their guidance, and their guidance directs us as to how many people we can have in a venue, outdoor, indoor, based on numbers. So what we'd be looking at as a comparison, I'm going to take outdoor activities. We have soccer and football, for example. Obviously, the football teams are larger. They have more coaching staff. They have more officials that are there. They also have people that are in the booth to do, support to a soccer team that has, a lot less of that need. So there may be an opportunity for us, depending on the numbers and how things play out, we may have more or less ability to have even parents or other students and other people attending events. Football is going to be the one that I think is the most challenging from the perspective of, like Russ was saying, we've had conversations with our athletic directors, and there are students even that are part of the team that aren't there necessarily that we would want to pull in to be able to attend. In addition to that, we've got cheerleaders and band and, other kids that we want to be able to get involved in their activities and get them in there. And that may, in fact, fill that capacity before we can get even our parents in. Our hope is that OSAA and OHA will be coming out with new guidance along the way as well that might alleviate some more of that. And as soon as that happens, we will be looking at moving that forward. So what I guess I'm bringing forward to the table now is, before we go out with this information, if the board is on board with looking at Lynn County risk assessment level for the athletics and activities, that we can entertain a motion tonight to make that exception to kind of what we've been doing in the way of the educational side of our work, which is limited by the RSSL guidelines. We will make that adjustment, and then they can appropriately update what they're going to be sending out to families. So wanted to put that out there and see if there's any discussion or questions. So looks like I have Director Ward has comment, question.
Thank you. So I'm a Benton County resident, and I know that Benton County has been frustrated with the way that their risk level has been calculated because of the high rate of testing that's happening here in the county and the impact of OSU students on the county population. I'd be interested in hearing from staff on, are there any drawbacks to going with just the Lynn County metrics as our guide for participation in athletics?
So there's, I guess, risk aversion would be the drawback if you're asking for that. I would ask our nurse, Rachel, to jump in, but she is strategically not on the call, so she can avoid no. She's watching. I think we as staff wouldn't encourage the reopening of the discussion if we felt deeply concerned for safety, for student safety. I think where we sit in this situation, if we were to remove the Benton County, is greater concern would happen in indoor playing spaces rather than out of the football field, right? And I think that we can communicate with our families what those risk factors are. I think people are fairly aware of what their risk factors are at this point. I don't anticipate deep concerns with that. I think that it would be a reasonable path forward. And I think it would be, particularly given that on Friday, the governor said, listen, we actually feel really good about the direction the state is going overall. And we know locally that we are on the right glide path. I think it would be the right thing to do to center students in. If the board were to take action on it, I'd be supportive.
Thank you. And to go ahead, Mr. Buttram.
Just one other thing I would offer for the board to consider is, when we look at Ready Schools, Safe Learners, we're generally looking at education, and we have schools in both counties. We don't generally have performance venues for these activities in both counties. I think the things we're actually doing are in Lynn County. And so that makes it a little bit more focused. We also don't draw our student body from the entirety of Benton County. We draw it from, just this side of Benton County, our piece of it. And I think that's relevant because that's not where the metrics are coming from out of Benton County.
Right. No, I appreciate that. And just to further clarify, we would be using just Lynn County metrics in our decisions about athletics and activities participation, not for opening of schools, and that we would still be looking at both counties and be directed by whichever one has, or whether they both have the higher level of risk. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the academic piece is no longer an issue for us, because if you remember, as soon as we hit March 29th, the agreements that we've made with both of our unions is that regardless of the county metrics, we are able to return back to school along the agreed upon glide paths. So the only place that those metrics are holding us back at the moment are in athletics and activities as of March 29th.
Right. And I guess I'm just looking further ahead with all the uncertainty that once both, we get them both to moderate, we're at one point, but once we get to low, there are opportunities there beyond what we have in place starting March 29th.
And all is fine. Yeah. And again, academically, I would say that wherever they are, whether they're green, yellow, orange, or red, no longer matters as of March 29th with academics.
And I do think what we would be looking at for the activities and athletics is the fact that we would be now considering just OHA and OSA guidelines. We still have those to follow. So they still have limitations depending on the risk category of our county, how many people we can have at a venue and what is considered part of the venue, like the fence line and that sort of thing. But at this point, we would be using those guidelines along with our current risk assessment for Lynn County. to make those decisions. So one, if we go into a low risk instead of moderate, that changes where we're at as well for those activities. Also, if OSAA or OHA come out with new guidelines, which we anticipate they might, based on the governor's recent announcement, that those might change some of those for Lynn County as well, and even open things up more than where we are today. So
I'm sorry to beat a dead horse. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So if Lynn County were to go to low risk, then that would offer some additional opportunities as far as athletics and activities. But we would need both counties to be in low risk to open up additional academic opportunities.
So for athletics, so your first part is correct. Beginning March 29th, we don't need both counties. The risk levels of the counties, as long as we are able to be open to hybrid learning, right? The risk levels of the counties are no longer markers for whether or not we can do that, because staff are able to return to in-person learning for that hybrid learning for academics starting March 29th. I'm not sure, I might be unclear of your question, but there are not limitations for us beginning on March 29th, unless we were to move into extreme risk again. That would be the place where we would run into problems with offering hybrid.
And Jen, are you asking more about the lines with maybe what does it look like going forward from our hybrid, and how do we continue to expand on our hybrid, right? So we're looking at right now, our hybrid model says this is how we were going to implement things right now for hybrid. That still is a factor based on us being in that moderate category, and what low risk and or if we ever get to no risk, which would be wonderful, what does that look like, and how do we start assessing that? We are in conversations already at the district office about what those next steps might look like, especially now that we're in that moderate range of, okay, so now how do we not only get people back into this hybrid learning, but now what are our plans for how might we be able to expand on that to 3/4 time or even getting back to full time? Some of that is going to depend, some of that is going to depend on those things that are being sent down by or decisions that are being made by OHA and the CDC and some of the other governing bodies about, like, for example, the 6 feet distance thing. We still have all of that in place. So even if we're at low risk, but they still have those requirements of us, we can't get everyone into our buildings if we're keeping everybody 6 feet apart. Now, if they come back and say, okay, now you can go back with 3 feet of socially distancing, what does that look like? And so I think, and Melissa, you can probably speak to this more, but I know there's a lot of discussions and planning happening about if those changes come, then what does that look like for the education and getting more time back in the classroom, and then hopefully by fall even being back to like almost full time in the classroom if we can get there. So,
yeah, thank you. That's correct. I'm sorry that I was slow on being able to process that of what your question was, because where my brain already was the limitation we're currently seeing now are the requirements around social distancing, and those don't change whether we're in the green zone or not. Even when we're in green right now, those 6 feet requirements and the 35 square feet per pupil are in place. And that really is what is limiting us then to the hybrid schedules. Even if we're all in green, we would still need to be in hybrid as long as those limits are placed on us by the Oregon Health Authority. So, yes, sorry, I wasn't quite getting to what your question was.
I could have come up with a clearer way to ask it.
No, you were asking it clearly.
So thank you. Good job, team. Thanks.
So I think we're all on board with, Director Roach, go ahead.
I just want to add my 2 cents that I think I like this idea. I think it gives us the most flexibility. I love the idea of prioritizing some students that may not have gotten that opportunity to do things such as band and cheer. So I'm excited about that. Just to clarify, Superintendent Goff, was it your decision did not allow parents at the football games? Was that made by you? Who was that?
No, so actually, the spectator count is just based on how many people can be on a field or in a gymnasium at one time, based on the metrics. That's completely driven by that. So all of that info can be found on the OSAA website. Our limits, where the decision point was that I made in a recommendation to you guys and you agreed to, was the Lynn and Benton County, that we would go forth together with both counties in our decision making. But that was the only decision that I made. There was an original agreement with our athletic directors within the conference they're now competing in, an informal agreement to not allow spectators at any of the games. We actually learned of that on Thursday, asked our athletic directors to verify that for us because we weren't comfortable with being in that agreement. It ended up not being an agreement that was signed or that other districts would sign either. I think probably a lot of the superintendents are feeling right now that there's an opportunity for us. And so then we, Executive Director Bettram worked really hard on Friday, worked with the ADs and clarified where the limitations were and how can we kind of lift that barrier. What I will say is that we all concur, though, that prioritizing access for our athletes and the kids who are in activities, so students first in getting kids back on the field or back into the gymnasium, is the first priority.
I do want to add too, I think that some people may not have understood either that the information, I think, from the athletic directors, from my understanding, was more around the fact that we were dealing with a conference that also encompassed schools from different counties that were at just different risk levels. So for example, we were playing against Benton County schools, and Benton County was at that time when they first met in the extreme risk category, which meant they were not allowed to have spectators and extra people at their events. And so to try to keep it as even as possible across that, that gap of all of those schools, we didn't want to have, some schools allowing and some schools not being. I think that's where some of that kind of agreement came into play. But we also know that if we are able to open things up in one area, that means that those parents might be able to attend the away games, even though they can't maybe at their own. Again, since that time, and we say since that time, it's only been a week or two, things are moving that quickly, that we've learned that Benton County is also coming out of their extreme risk into high risk, and probably even within a couple weeks, the hope is that if they stay on the same trend, they'll be in moderate within another 2-week period of time anyway. So hopefully that won't be an issue either. Assistant Superintendent Harlan, yeah, go ahead.
So Director Butzner, I think you make a good point, and it's something that's important to keep in mind, is that because in our conferences we're playing other schools that are in other counties, it is very possible that you might be able to be a spectator here in this county, but at an away game you may not. And that's not a decision that the district makes, but I would just keep that in mind, because we are lucky in that our county is coming down, but that's not true for all of our neighboring counties.
Director Bettram.
Just on that note, this is late today kind of stuff. So as we're trying to wrap our arms around this whole conversation, the current agreement, I believe, with the league that we're playing in right now is that the visitor capacity at a venue would be allocated to the home team, primarily because chasing your tail on which venue happens to have what standards today is a little bit tough. And so that seemed to be a more manageable approach, at least for now.
Makes sense, yeah. Director Aganaga.
I agree with your statements. I had a question. So if we only go operate off of Lynn County regulations or numbers, and OSAA says, okay, Lynn County is at 8 extreme measures, so they have to follow these rules. Is GAPS going to just match OSAA kind of lettering of what they're putting out. Like if OSAA says we're at a 4 level safety precautions, is GAPS prepared just to say, okay, well, we're just at 4?
Go ahead, Director Bertram.
Can I take that one? So, Director Aganago, thank you. The way that OHA and OSA have laid out the guidance is based on the county's risk level. It's not more refined than that, and it's based off of the color codes that we've seen there. So we're in one of the colors, or we're not in one of the colors, and then we follow the standards associated with that. And they're really clear about what happens for each color standard. So how many people you can have in an indoor venue or an outdoor venue with full contact or not full contact. That's really clear. The place where the OSAA and OHA guidance breaks down is they didn't really envision a county that had a foot, or a school district that had a foot in 2 counties, and didn't provide any guidance on what to do with that. So what we've elected to do at this point is to reach into Ready Schools Safe Learners and pull that standard forward to kind of fill in the gap in what the guidance that they provided. And that's why we have latitude to say we're going to do it differently, is because we are filling in a gap in what they've provided with this other approach that we had agreed to. So we can choose to do that a little bit differently in this case, where we couldn't in others. But the basic assessment of if Lynn County is in the moderate risk category, the rules for what we have to follow there are very clear in there and solid.
And Director Aganaga, I think that if, if those rules change for OSAA and they say next week that moderate looks different and they're going to add 100 more people per venue or whatever, what we're saying is we're giving our district the ability to follow that guideline based on the Lynn County risk levels, regardless of what OSAA may do to change that, which we assume they're only going to open up more and more as they go.
And it's a moving target. I mean, sometimes Russ sends us things in the morning and then the afternoon they're different again. So yeah, I just trying to see if if we have to operate in orange category, then we go by orange rules. And
if we ended up going back up to extreme for some unknown reason, I mean, we will be having a different discussion at that point too. That's where, hoping that's not the case. And then with vaccines happening and, people continuing to do, follow the recommendations that are out there, I think we're seeing a lot of progress in the right direction. And I don't anticipate that will change much. So Superintendent Goff, go ahead.
Chair Butzner, thank you. I would just like to request, though, and you mentioned it earlier, that if the board would like to depart from the practice we've had, that there's a motion and the board take a vote on it, because I think it's an important enough change that we should have a decision to do that. We could certainly go off of this conversation, but I think this is a moment where it's an opportunity to make sure we have the board voice on it.
And this was something that came up, and I apologize because I did kind of spring it on my fellow board members because we just had a conversation late today about these options, and so wanted to put it out there tonight. So it is not it's not on our agenda as an actual motion. So we would just be looking for someone to make a motion to follow the Lynn County risk assessment levels when it comes to athletics and activities, and therefore following OHA and OSAA guidelines directly for Lynn County. Director Ward, I think, had.
Sure. So I move to direct staff to look solely at Lynn County metrics when determining participant levels for our school activities.
Camera, it does not detect a camera. And we're starting on a vote.
Director Thompson, we can hear you. You may wish to mute yourself.
Okay.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Camera issues.
Okay, go ahead, Director Ward.
I think I finished it, but shall I restate?
No, you're okay. I think I've got it.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the table to direct district staff to take into account only Lynn County risk level factors in regards to athletics and activities going forward, which will give us the ability to utilize just the OSAA and OHA guidance. Director Ward.
Hi.
Director Roach,
Aye.
Director Aganaga,
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson,
Aye. I'm here.
LJ,
Aye.
Esperanza.
Aye.
I also vote aye, so that passes unanimously. Thank you. Russ, you got your work cut out for you, and you'll have to change your report that was going to go out to families. So thank you for doing that.
No problem at all.
Excellent.
Thank you. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Okay. Let's see, that moves us into our financial reports, and we have a budget update. Jim's with us, yes?
Unmute
Yeah, leave
myself.
him. Oh, there he is.
Yep.
Excellent.
So you have a one-page handout. And what this does is that last week, the state came out with new estimates on the state school fund, both for the current year and the first one for next year. And this page summarizes the results. These are the numbers they have for us. And also I've put on it the assumptions they made about the state level, so you could see what is driving these numbers and why these numbers change. And that's really the purpose tonight, is to, first of all, talk a little bit about the general situation that we're going into. And then secondly, to talk about, which is actually the more important part, is this is a very volatile time, but in financially, a combination of all sorts of things, including a new biennium for the state, and just to talk about the possibility that these numbers move and what the impact of them moving is, because there's a bigger risk than normal in this regard. So if you want to go straight to the bottom line, the new estimate for 2021 for us is 97.9 million. I think it's a little bit more than what we were assuming for this year. Remember, this is the entire formula of the state school fund. So it includes the local property tax, it includes some of the other local revenues plus the state money. So this is like 97% of our general fund operating our ongoing income. This is almost all of our ongoing income in the general fund is wrapped up in this number. And then for next year, for 21-22, it's 95.6 million. Now that is not as bad as it sounds, because, you know, this is the pandemic period and we have received some increases in some temporary fundings for for COVID. We've got just recently a $7 million grant, one-time kind of grant for costs around COVID. And we also will get an increase in our student investment account of about 3.5. That estimate just came out last week as well. That's an increase over the current year. So I think the situation we're walking into is one in which the general fund is gonna have some challenges, but we have you're gonna have to consider in the budget processes a lot of grant incomes in a way perhaps you haven't had to combine before in a budget process. And every school district in the state is going through this. As soon as the state started doing a lot of like the student investment account and even Measure 98, they started producing more money for academics that was dedicated. You're starting now, how do we combine these funds to get realistic, to get a better educational outcomes for our kids? And when your general fund is challenged and the other things are increasing, you've got some issues about how to deal with the situation. So I think that's really what you're walking into in this next budget. So let me talk a little bit about the assumptions that are behind it. First of all, it assumes an appropriation, which is what's in the governor's budget, of 9.1 billion. So that's a very small increase over the 9 billion from the prior biennium. And remember, that's a 2-year number. So that's a very small increase over a 2-year period, about 0.5%. Then they split that. This is a typical thing they do. They split it 49-51. And so you see that split in 1920 and in 2021. And the same sort of split in 21-22 versus 22-23, you actually get less money, state money, going into the system next year than this year, because that the 49-51 is bigger growth than the biennial growth. And so it tends to roller coaster the estimate. You tend to get a low estimate in the first year of the biennium and a bigger one in the second year of the biennium. And it just tends to roller coaster on you. Then you have the statewide local revenue that comes in. ESDs are funded out of this account, as well as a number of other programs. They come off. The transportation grant comes off. And then they divide what's left by the number of students, of weighted students in the state, and come up with a grant. And look at what's happening to those weighted student numbers. Those things are moving around in ways I've never seen them move. And I've been doing this since I worked for the legislature 40 years ago. And to go from 704 to 708 and then down to 703. Now remember, these are all estimates. Even the old number is an estimate. These are all estimates, but just to have it move like that. And there's an issue underneath that, and it's really what's happened when kids have left a regular school and gone into like an online charter school. Because of the way the system works, it tends to it gives an increase to the charter school that gets these kids, and then all the other schools that lose them, they use last year's number, and it tends to blow the number up statewide. That's what's happening. And this is coming back down. So then if you work that through, you work that state grant per student down to gaps. So that same number comes down. And then there's a teacher experience adjustment. In our particular case, we have younger teachers, less experienced than the average statewide. So we get a reduction of 66 per student. Their estimate is that the amount of younger that we are is going to be a little less next time. So that's only a 45 reduction. You divide it by our weighted student count. And if you recall, probably from what Russ has told you before, if your enrollment goes down, which ours has this year, we get to use the count from the prior year. And so we will use last year's count of 11,030. And that's one of the reasons that that grant stays up to 97.9. Next year, we have to live with whatever number we get. And so that number that we're using right now is a drop a drop. And so that's also another reason why that number is dropping. But this enrollment number is really uncertain. We had about 1,000 fewer kids show up in a brick and mortar school this year compared to the prior year. And most of them at the elementary level. About 600 of them went to Albany to the online, but we ended up with about 400 that we don't know where they went. And especially at kindergarten level, there's a lot of kindergartners and elementary kids are in that. For almost all of them are that. And so it's not really clear next year whether we get those back or how many We're going to get back, and especially for kindergartners, what grade they're going to come into. And so there's a fair amount of uncertainty about that. this is a relatively conservative number for us. This was the one we gave them some time ago before I got here. I think it's a relatively conservative number, but it's certainly possible. So that's sort of the situation we're in. I think there's a much bigger risk to these numbers than normal. I think this number's, it's not the lowest it could be, but I think it's probably below what the odds are. I think our number will be a little higher than it is that it will be lower. It's a better chance of it being higher than lower, but it's still a decline. The other piece of information is the new revenue forecast came out for the state, and it wasn't like shining a lot better, but it was better than somewhat than the prior one. So that's making people feel a little bit better. That at least that there's a floor to these numbers, and that there is some possibility that there could be an increase. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to be sure I hit. Yeah, I think that's the big thing. Oh, the one other thing I could talk about it is the sensitivity of these numbers. A couple of things just in your head might be another 100 million in the state appropriation is about $700,000 to us. Another 100 ADM is about 950,000 to us. Although that's a little bit tricky because student counts are relative. And if we're losing kids, other districts are losing kids. And if we're gaining kids, other districts are probably gaining kids too, because they're subject to the same pandemic issues that we are. So that might be less risky in the long run than it seems, but nobody really knows the answer to that. And so that's the situation we're walking into. In the preparation of the budget, we really want to have good numbers on the major grants, and especially those that are increasing, and the flexible funds, and make them part of the conversation, and we're preparing for that. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to talk about them.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Vice Chair Thompson, go ahead.
Yeah. I really, in the back of my mind, I know this is a general fund discussion, but you mentioned the student investment account, 3.6 million to us, perhaps, based on
that was the increase over the prior year. Right?
Yeah, so like a total of like 6 or something, right? All told, maybe.
Right.
Which is closer to, we had a magic number when things, right before a year ago, right before things went south, we had this magic number of about 7 million we were looking at, and it seemed like, oh gosh, that was great, and then the pandemic hit, and it sounds like that account has rebounded to some degree, to a large degree.
But the state tax revenues have just done very well.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
And people need, we say student investment, we have outlined what that pays for, and we have highlighted counselors, elementary schools, behavioral specialists. We've gone a high, middle, and low. I can't remember, there's a whole document. I can't remember off the top of my head, but perhaps being able to pay for fees for sports and athletics in the future. This is great stuff. This is good stuff. And I just, we say words like SIA and all that. And I'm probably, a lot of people have heard me, are probably tired of hearing me say that, but it's a great account, and it's a great thing, and I'm looking forward to it being fully funded, as the projection was in 2019 or 2020, before the pandemic hit. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? You guys have the overview summary of the report in in board book as well. So very thorough. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Looks like you are off the hook for a lot of questions.
I like questions.
I know you do. All right. So with that, let me back over here. We're going to move into some board reports, and I wanted to start with one item, and that was just an update on the superintendent evaluation process. And we have had an executive session where we get presented typically information through those processes. And right now we are in the process of receiving and discussing the superintendent's self-evaluation. So thank you to her for putting that together. It was very thorough. Once we have that, we also are in the process of receiving feedback from staff in different areas of our district, which we will also take into account. And then the board members will also do independent evaluations of their own, in which they include feedback from the public that they've received throughout the year. And those will all happen along the way here. And I don't know, Director Ward, if you wanted to speak to a little bit of the timeline at all, but we have just kind of started that process, and it will extend here for a little while.
No, you covered it well, Chair Butzner. The feedback from staff has already been submitted to our consultant, Krista Parent. We've received the self-evaluation, like you said, and we board members can be expecting the feedback survey in our inboxes probably in the next 24 hours.
Great. And thank you for all your work as our representative from the board to working with Krista on taking care of all that. So, all right. And then I also wanted to, on behalf of the board, I had it on my list as well, but Superintendent Goff kind of beat me to the punch, which was fine, but also congratulating LJ on his election win at West Albany. He will be the senior class president, correct? Yes. So congratulations on that. That's great. And I know we all at our last meeting had congratulated Esperanza on hers, and I believe junior class, was it vice president or president? President? She's nodding her head, yes. So great. Congrats to both of you, and I think that's awesome. All the great things you're doing for your school, and in addition to kind of keeping up with your studies and your activities and everything else. We know you guys are busy, and for that reason we very, very much appreciate having you on the board as well, because that does take a lot of time, and I know that you both take it very seriously too, and that you put in the time and actually have a lot of people providing you input and feedback that you're sharing with us, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for that. And Director Ward, I think you had a report to start with?
Yeah, a brief report and some musings since I have the pulpit, as it will. So I just want to give a wish good luck to all of our district musicians who are competing in the solo ensemble festival this year. So normally that is done in person, usually mostly at OSU. Last year's was so disappointing because we had kind of districts, and then our musicians who had won and were able to go on to compete at the state level weren't able to do that because then state got canceled. So this year our musicians are having to make recordings, which are due the end of this week. So good luck to all of them. I had the opportunity today to overhear a conversation amongst a group of our high school students, and they were kind of reflecting on, geez, it's been a year. They were saying we have been out of school for a year, and I think I know, and I didn't realize that I was doing this, but I feel like I've been reflective about that year, not only in my personal life, but what that's meant for us as a district. And you know, I won't bore everybody with all of my musings, but a few things that stood out to me. It has been, I think, my rather unique experience, and Kim's is so not so unique because it's been Kim's as well. But in the 4 years that we have served on this board, we have served under 3 superintendents. And I'm just, the work that Melissa has done and Lisa and the staff under her has just been extraordinary over this past year. And there's so much that I could highlight, but one of the things that I've really appreciated is the transparency and the communication that you've had. It is the best communication that I've had, or that I've experienced under 3 superintendents. And our last one was really great. I think under these circumstances, it would be very tempting to hunker down and put your head down and just deal with the multiple of crises that are coming across your desk every single day, right? And just get through it. And instead, instead we're having, I shouldn't say we, you are having parent forums, you're having student forums, you're communicating via, Facebook, we're getting emails, we're getting these, and not just us as board members, but they're coming from the district, they're coming from my middle school daughter's principal, my high school daughter's principal. I'm usually hearing things in like 3 or 4 different ways. We have been really aided by adding a full-time communications director to our staff who has been superb. And as we noted earlier, just this format and the engagement that we've had with our community is remarkably greater than perhaps we've ever had in the past. There are so many things that I'm grateful to you for, and that is one of them. Things that I'm excited about. In the near term, I'm really excited about athletics and activities. I've got a band girl, and I'm glad that you addressed that so thoroughly, because that is an immediate win. And I know we'll have more of a discussion later tonight about the calendar, but I'm really looking forward, as we come through what I really hope and feel is the home stretch of this pandemic, and what does it look like for our district beyond this. I am so excited. And we have learned and done so much. We have done things that haven't been done before because they were so big, nobody thought that we could do them, right? But we have this one-on-one technology now, and we're learning that no, distance learning doesn't work for all of our students or our families. We knew it wouldn't going into it. But for a lot, it does, or aspects of it does. And I just really hope that when we return to normal, that our normal includes the good things that we have gained from this remarkable period of time. And I hope that as a district, as a board, as leadership, that we are looking forward to those opportunities, and that we as a board will be supporting leadership that will make those opportunities reality for our children and for our staff. Now, just because I can, I'm going to speak directly to those in the public that are watching us tonight, because this is a highly transitory time, and it's ironically similar to last spring, when things were happening so quickly and so suddenly. As we were winding down, right? We were understanding the virus better week by week. There were new restrictions from different entities, some of them conflicting, federal, state, county, and we were having to pivot almost daily. Change has been a source, has been a constant throughout this pandemic, but we're sort of gearing up again. And these changes are coming at us very, very rapidly as we as the pandemic winds down and society gears up again. So I would like to make some requests of you, of our public. One, that you have patience with us, because things are changing so rapidly. And as we talked just about athletics, about the different overlays of guidance that we're getting and how quickly that's changing and how we're having to take the time to figure out how they interact and what we're actually supposed to be following. So if you're really upset or really concerned about something right here and now, will you just give us a week or two? Because I guarantee you it will look differently. I'd also like to ask you that if you do have concerns or questions, that you go to the source, that there is a lot of misinformation, missing information, half information that's being circulated right now. And that if you have concerns for your student, for your family, for your job, that you come to us on the board or directly to our staff, and we want to give you good, full, transparent information, and we are committed to doing that, and I think we've showed that this far. Thank you, Chair Butzner.
Thank you, Director Ward, for sharing those things. I agree with all of them, and I appreciate you taking the time to put those comments out there for us. I think we also have Director Roach. I see you had your hand up as well.
Well, first, I wanted to echo those the fact that information is changing so rapidly. As a brand new board member, trying to get up to speed in a normal year would be rough. This has been an incredibly unique experience, and I want to echo the transparency piece that Director Ward mentioned, that to be able on a front of social media and forums and communicating with us as a board so we can give you the direction that you need. I really just have been really impressed with your leadership on that, Superintendent Goff. I wanted to just share, I had the blessing of being, for my university work, of being able to be vaccinated. And I went to the vaccine clinic at the Expo Center. And after hearing nightmares of what was going on at the up in Portland at the convention center with the educators being vaccinated, I have to say, for our county health department, the volunteers, it was incredible. I mean, it was so smooth. Everyone was so incredibly nice. It was great seeing former colleagues of mine in the school district. So I really appreciated that. We heard from Representative Bosshart that our vaccinations for our school district are the highest of any district in the county, which is absolutely wonderful. And it made me think about the CDC report that came out today, that it was really great news for those who are vaccinated. You know, anyone who's watched a board meeting with me has known that I've been rather conservative when it comes to COVID. And, you know, that's really because my life has been touched by COVID and medical issues this year. To hear that the transmission rates between people who are vaccinated are so low, to hear that people who are vaccinated can start being in close quarters, maskless. I think it's just a really important thing to hear for our staff who have been able to be vaccinated. And, you know, I think I've been guilty of this, of letting perfect be the enemy of good. And there's a lot we don't know about this pandemic, but I think we've got a good setup here. And the timing that we set up with staff being able to get vaccinated, get their first shot, get their second shot, and have those 2 weeks of building up those antibodies, it works perfectly for our plan. And so I really want to applaud our leadership and your discussions with the county and getting all those things moving so that it could work really well to make sure that it all flew through. As Director Ward was talking about just opportunities for next year in the calendar, it reminded me of one of my favorite things I've been thinking about lately is just these opportunities that are coming up with this pandemic, that it's easy, particularly with the year that we've had, to look at this like a crisis, but to look at this as an opportunity where we have a lot of students and staff who have really thrived with online learning. And so as we start this really, where we see the end of the tunnel, and we see a light at the end of the tunnel, and thinking about ways that we can integrate technology, integrate learning at home. When I was a 5th grade teacher at Sunrise, I did a lot of learning about using Khan Academy and flipping the classroom, right? Where kids would do a lot of the learning at home and then the practice at school with support from their teachers. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about our district hopefully being able to dive into. So there's some really cool opportunities out there, and I'm just excited that we have innovative thinkers right now at the table. That makes me really happy.
Thank you. That reminded me of something that I've had questions about as well, but then also I think are important to us, and that we've had a couple of the kind of memorandum of understandings along with our labor folks and our staff, and trying to make sure with the vaccinations that we were getting people vaccinated. And I know earlier we chatted a little bit about some of the decisions that have been made and transparency of those decisions. And I think sometimes what we've found is it's a little difficult to be running in the midst of trying to make all the decisions, having things change so often, trying to make the work happen, and at the same time, trying to make sure all of the information that needs to get out there is out there. And I don't think it's anyone's intent to be having a lack of transparency. It just stems from the amount of kind of chaotic information being thrown. And what we're dealing with is from every angle of everything with this pandemic, from facilities and keeping a bond going, and transportation items. And, you know, it extends beyond so many facets of work, that we have a lot of people trying to get their work done. That memorandum of understanding, and I want to be clear with the public as well. I think that early on in this process, a long time ago when the pandemic started, one of the things that we needed to do was put together a blueprint of how we as a district were going to navigate through some of this. And that blueprint was written right up front to say, here's what we're going to do as a district going forward with planning for hybrid learning, planning for distance learning, planning for our staff, planning for our students, planning for the families. And we supported that blueprint, and we did approve that early on as a board in one of our board meetings. And I know that OSBA recently mentioned the fact that, you know, reopening decisions right now, normally the board identifies calendar changes, but when it comes to opening and closing school choices, that comes from the superintendent working with the district staff. And that didn't change. And with this blueprint that we approved as a board, that was part of that decision-making that the board had given to the superintendent. I know there's been some questions about whose decisions those are. And I think we want to be clear that we as a board collectively made that decision. And yes, then the superintendent's role outside of the board is to make those day-to-day decisions. That doesn't mean that those decisions go without her letting us know what the plans are. Likewise, with the MOUs that had been agreed upon with our labor union, those were things that were discussions between labor and the district, and those were things that were presented to us as a board. Most of the changes to those MOUs that were out there had to do with reopening plans. And it was as things were changing and the instructions that we were getting from OHA and the Department of Education and Ready Schools, Safe Learners, we had the need to make some planning changes for what our scheduling was going to look like and how we were going to do that. And yes, we do have to do that in relation with our labor unions, and that's what those MOUs were for. We're just to identify some of those changes. But I want people to understand that the board was behind those decisions, and they were not easy decisions to make by any means. It does not mean that any of us don't care about the kids, and we want that what's best for them. And I think we're seeing that we can continue to make adjustments to those decisions as we move through. So I wanted to put that out there as well. Those MOUs and things like that are not decisions that we vote on, and they're not necessarily things that we change board policy for. We're in a pandemic year, and we don't change our board policies solely for the purpose of temporary needs, but we did have a blueprint in place that took the place of those policies, and that blueprint is what we submitted. And they keep changing. So again, we will continue to look at that as we go as well. I too am excited about the fact that we have a lot of really positive things going on. And one of the things I wanted to mention is the fact that we also have lots of new facilities. So as we are getting ready to have our students come back, several of our schools, keep in mind too, these students haven't been at. We've had conversations about the fact that we need to give our freshmen an opportunity to get into their high school for a few days and check things out and experience that. We have the same issue with our middle school students. You know, we want those sixth graders to get in there and have an opportunity to experience that in their middle schools. And I think that everyone is super excited to see as we go back to some of these schools. We have a brand new school, Meadow Ridge, that hasn't been able to be fully occupied at this point, and they'll be coming back to that brand new facility. Same thing at West Albany High School. We've got just a great amount of changes there that are so exciting for the students to come back to, I think, and see. In addition to that, just through our bond project, that bond project has not stopped during this pandemic either. And there's been so many improvements and enhancements made to so many of our schools that our district staff have been managing through this whole time as well. And all of those things are going to be there for these students when they get back as well. So I think that's an exciting thing. We do want to get them back and going. We have had to make up some time based on the pandemic, based on the fires. Our construction folks have had to put in extra work. So for example, at West Albany High School, that played a little bit of a factor in when we chose to go back to school as well, because we get the keys there in April to be able to really go in mid-April. And so we kind of needed to factor that in. Part of that is because those construction workers then, while our kids were out trying to make up some time, have really gone into high gear and said, hey, if we focus now completely, we can have keys to you by this time frame. So we're excited to be able to have those students go back in a capacity where they have that full school environment to work from. So those are all exciting things that we've had going on that we also want to make sure everyone's aware of. I see Vice Chair Thompson's hand up as well.
Yeah, since everyone is sharing thoughts and hopes for the future and whatnot, you know, I think a great example of how we work can be found in my excitement about the potential of going back to in-person meetings. The superintendent has already thought about, well, yes, but look at all the new ways we can make those even better. And it's not just the superintendent, assistant superintendent don't just wait for us. They ultimately respond to us, but they don't just wait for us to point. They are often, we work together in consultation, and ultimately we give direction, like we gave direction to look at both Benton County and Lynn County when those policies came out in terms of COVID, but we give space to the superintendent as the education leader of this community, but we work closely with her. We're on plan D, E, and F, and we don't wait for 2 weeks between a meeting to give our input. I have always found it easy to contact either superintendent or assistant superintendent, and we all have regularly scheduled meetings with the superintendent. So these meetings, I tend to be quiet at these meetings a lot. I try to be efficient in my talking and try not only talk when it's important, but these are the business meetings of the district. And, I tend to talk when it's time to make a decision, but that doesn't preclude decisions that are going on all the times outside of the actual school board meeting. And thinking about as bad as and how many tough decisions we've been thrown on all of our plates, the work continues. In the summer, we passed as a board the educational equity policy, and I've just you pass a policy and you wonder, well, that's a lot of words, and what does it really mean? And I've just been amazed at all the different ways I've seen that policy come into fruition, and it starts with the superintendent who leads with that and takes that policy 100%. And just last week, there's a story in the paper about at South Albany during professional development, they had a day of Black leaders in the community came and spoke to teachers and talked about their lived experiences and how teachers can incorporate that into their work. And it sounded like I didn't go to the meeting, but it sounded like a great dialogue back and forth. And that's just a small little thing that has happened, but that work continues. And I'm excited to continue to work on that. There's a lot more to come, but I've already, like I said, you pass a policy and you wonder what's happening. And I just see it continually. It comes up all the time. So that's, as we get closer to that March 29th date, those are the kind of things I'm looking forward to and kind of the excitement that I share.
Thank you. Director Roach, I think, did you have your hand up again? Oh, okay. Maybe I just didn't put it down. I apologize. I'm looking around the room. Are there any other board reports, comments, things going on? No? Okay. I think we are good. That was a lot of reports from us. We don't normally have that many, but we're good. I think our liaison reports, we're still kind of in a place where we aren't having a lot of those interactions at this point, meetings. So we'll continue to follow up on those as we're able to get back into holding some of those meetings with our counterparts around the community. And then we are into our student board reports. Gosh, dang it. I always try to remember where I left off last time. Is it LJ's like, me. Okay, LJ, you're first. You got it.
I'll start off with echoing what Director Ward said. We have the District Solo Ensemble Festival coming up fully online for us band kids. We're really thankful to have the opportunity to be able to do something like this, because this is if not one of the only opportunity at competition that we have in our area of expertise in band. So that's coming up this weekend and we're all super excited. We have many groups coming out of West Albany, groups and solos, which is super cool. Lots of participation there. Our fall sports season has begun with boys and girls soccer, football, and cross country all practicing and competing. Volleyball has the green light to start next Monday, which is super awesome. Both soccer teams won a game last week, and the football team lost a close game in the opener, but they're looking to bounce back, and they will. with academics, there's only 3 weeks left in the quarter and things are going smoothly. And West Albany is offering the ACT on April 13th, which is super cool to see that we're still offering things like that, even though we may not be fully in person. As you guys have heard, we fully successfully held class elections virtually and had a great turnout. I just want to give a big shout out to Mr. Ide and Osborne and all the people that were working behind the scenes with the voting and everything that had to go into it, putting all the videos together and stuff. There was a lot of work going into it. And lastly, me, myself, and our ASB president, Trenton Crow, and leadership are working together to get things going, to get activities limited, in person, socially distanced, anything that we can do as soon as possibly getting things done. We have ideas such as trivia nights and other small activities for small groups to happen that we're trying to get underway as soon as possible. So that's what we have coming up.
You are busy. Thank you for everything that you're doing. It's great to hear. It's nice to hear that there's so many things still happening and people are finding ways. I know I've seen a lot of them on social media, posts from the students saying, hey, we're doing elections, vote here. We're putting together our yearbook. Here's how you can give us information. And, having some of those activities. And then I think we're using technology really well to share some of those things out to people. And it's nice to see. It's nice to hear some of those activities being reported about again as well. So thank you for that. Esperanza, you're up.
I see why LJ wanted to go first. He wanted to steal all the thunder. Wow. Really had to go like that. All right. Of course, athletics have jump started and things are going great. It was amazing to see while the broadcasting was working, all the football players out on the field. It was a very close game and I'm very sorry for those guys, but it is just a moment to just, hey, we're pushing forward. Things are going. I know it's kind of hard right now and not always the best situation, but we're doing it and we're pushing forward. And that's something that we always wanted to see. And I spoke last week about the choir director, Mr. DeYoung, coordinating a great project to uplift our Red Talk students. It entails sending a message to alumni and students and having them send in a video. And as far as I know, we're able to give you guys a sneak peek of the video. And I'm supposed to ask Mr. Tomsky to play the video if he can.
Yes, just one moment.
My older sister will be in the next one, but so far not in this one, but it's just great to see them.
I'm Bonnie Schoen, and I am a South Albany High School graduate. I graduated in 1999.
Hi everybody, my name is Amanda, and I graduated from South Albany in 2012.
Hi guys, my name is Kira Prince, and I graduated South in 2016.
Hi, my name is Jillian. I graduated from South Albany in 2012.
Hi guys, my name is Kara. I graduated from South Albany in 2013, which is wild. I'm 26 now, so a lot of you probably think I'm a boomer.
And now I am a kindergarten teacher here in Albany. I've taught at Liberty, Tahkeena, Clover Ridge, Timber Ridge, and now I'm at Meadow Ridge, the brand new school. So if you are a former student, hey!
And now I am all the way over in Florida working on product development for Lucasfilm and Marvel.
Recently graduated college from Brigham Young University, Idaho, this last July with a Bachelor of Arts in Theater Studies and a performance emphasis. I currently am getting ready to serve a proselyting mission for my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I also work for a company called Adam Backgrounds, which hires out actors for film and TV up in Portland. I also have an improvised podcast called A Bit of Funny.
And in the fall of 2020, I started graduate school for mental health counseling with drama therapy. It took me 7 years after I graduated high school to figure out what it was exactly that I wanted to do, and then to go back to undergrad and start to make that happen. And I just want you to know that it's never too late to change your mind about what you want or to start something new altogether.
But I currently live in Columbus, Ohio. I attend the Ohio State University College of Medicine. So I'm a first-year med student, gonna be a doctor. And like you guys, I have been doing online school. And it has been frustrating and definitely challenging.
I hope you guys are staying strong and staying positive in this pandemic. It is really a difficult time for everyone in different ways, but we're going to be meeting in person soon, and I just hope that you're looking forward to it as much as teachers are. And just remember, even though it's hard right now, we still have hope. There's still lots of stuff we can do to stay positive. So stay strong and be kind and spread the joy. Bye.
So if you would have asked me 10 years ago if this is where I thought I would be, no way, but things change. And to that point, I know that things suck right now. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It sucks, but things change. And I just wanted to let you know how in awe I am at how well you have adapted to change. And I think you have this really great ability to change and change things and make things what you want them to be. So keep it up. You're doing great. We'll all get through this.
My advice would be just to cherish every single moment because it goes by so quickly. And to just keep going. There's so much good in the world, and there are so many wonderful things ahead. You put so much into this world that is needed and that is loved. You are loved, you are important, and you just gotta keep going even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, keep going, because you're capable of so many amazing things. And if you haven't heard it yet today, I love you.
Be kind, be patient, be gentle with yourself while you learn about who you are and what you want, especially right now, as this last year has been so hard for so many people. No one needs your patience and your kindness and your love more than yourself right now.
And whatever you guys are feeling, whether that be frustrated, sad, neutral, happy, all those feelings are valid. And I am rooting for you guys. I think you guys are awesome, and I hope you have a great week.
So thank you, Mr. DeYoung, for getting that video together. I think it definitely put a smile on everyone here. It was great to see the I can't say the word, alumni students and having them share their experiences with us and knowing that we're not in this alone. Yeah, thank you.
What a great project, and just some phenomenal people out there coming out of Albany that have come back to share with us. That was very inspiring, and I'm looking forward to the second edition for sure. So if you get a chance to see Mr. DeYoung, thank him for all of us. That was very well done. Is that all for you, Esperanza, for the night?
I did want to say thank you to Miss Goth for everything that she's been doing, and Miss Harlem. I don't think you guys really get enough appreciation out there, and I know you guys are working hard. And I'm not gonna lie, I looked at the what are they called? The comments from the public, and I was a little ashamed on how some people were reacting towards you guys and just not being the kind souls that they need to be, and patience. And this is a frustrating time, but I don't think you guys deserve the backlash that you're getting. I think you guys are doing amazing, and I just want to take a second to realize that because of the school shutting down and things being the way they are, not as many people are being affected by COVID, not as many deaths as there might be. And I don't think that's something people focus on. As someone who was affected by it, and just when my mother had it, it was a very hard time, and just hearing how things could have gone. And it was because of a school opening over in Tennessee that she got it. So that's why I'm one of the reasons why I'm the way I am. But you guys are doing great. And I don't think people are realizing that their loved ones, their grandparents, their mother, their father are not being affected in different ways, because COVID can't be long lasting because of you guys. And we're just very grateful.
Thank you so much.
All right. Moving on from our board reports, we have a presentation from FACT. Yes?
So
We have everyone here, yes?
I think so.
Okay.
So we're going to go from one really, really great note. Super proud to work in a district. LJ and Esperanza were your students. You're the reason we do this every day. So just thank you. From one really great thing to another, we have special education coordinator Sonia Hart here, who is going to give us some information about FACT. Earlier in the meeting, Chair Butzner, you read the Social Worker Proclamation for National Social Worker Month. And FACT is really unique to Albany, but that is kind of our center where we have, well, Sonia will tell you all about it, but that is really our connection to families. So it is not an accident that it is National Social Worker Month and we have this presentation. So I will let Special Education Coordinator Sonia Hart take it over.
Thank you. And I am going to attempt to share a presentation with you. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Chair Butzner, Vice Chair Thompson, Superintendent Goff, Assistant Superintendent Harlan, and members of the board. Thank you for spending a few minutes of your time tonight to learn about one of the hidden gems of Greater Albany Public Schools, our FACT team. FACT is a team of specialists whose focus is to bring families and communities together to support the students of Albany. FACT is a program unique to GAPS. I'm not aware of any other district with a team of social workers who provide support to families in this way. Their mission is to bridge any gaps between families and schools, providing connections to social and health services, coaching and advocacy, and providing students with access to resources such as school supplies, food, and clothing. Oops. The FACT program started over 20 years ago as an outreach program for students at West Albany High School. Some of you may know Cheryl Wilkinson and Debbie Stevens, who were two of the founding members. In the past 20 years, the program has relocated to the AOS building, sharing space with nurses and Welcome Center, and now has six team members who provide support to students in all 21 schools, including AOL. FACT staff come from a wide variety of backgrounds. Let me introduce our team. Starting from the upper left corner, Tara Dixon is our office manager, as well as the Mckinney-Vento Liaison. She has been in the district for 20 years and began her work supporting students in the night school. Sabrina Bumgarner is also an office manager who assists with clerical tasks for both FACT and nurses. She has worked in several of our schools across the district. Gene Vey is our longest standing member. With his military background and experience as a licensed counselor, he has built connections with hundreds of families across the district. He also leads the district's crisis intervention team. Rhonda Jacks comes to Albany after working as a family coach with DHS and uses her experiences to help support high school students and our teen parents. Sarah Seeger is a family engagement specialist who we contract with from LBL. She has spent many years providing family support to families in other districts, and we are grateful that she's joined our team this year. Rich Guzman is a bilingual team member who also has a background in the military. His experience as a youth pastor has allowed him to make many connections with high schoolers, as well as numerous Spanish-speaking families. Rebecca Seltz has been a teacher for 13 years, most recently at Timber Ridge. She brings classroom experience to her work, which allows her to really understand the challenges some of her families face in connecting with schools. Shanna Turner worked for 10 years with the juvenile department, which has provided her with the skills to lead groups such as Boys Circle and Boys Council and Girls Circle in several of our middle schools. This variety of experiences and skills has provided us with a team that can connect with many of our students and families outside of the classroom. Connecting families with resources is a primary function of the FACT team. Here are a few examples of some of the services the team provides: food and clothing, access to resources for medical and mental health care, information and access to parenting classes, and resources for housing and basic living needs. The partnerships that FACT has developed with community agencies is a strength for this program. They work closely with FISH, ABC House, Boys and Girls Club, and Albany Public Schools Foundation to close gaps to resources for students and families, and in doing so, strengthen our community. In addition to the support they provide to students and families within the schools, FACT oversees several projects that have positive impacts on students. As a primary source of funding, FACT oversees the Medicaid survey, which occurs 3 to 4 times per year. Additionally, team members support programs such as the Teen Parent Program, self-sufficiency programs, access to mental health vouchers, and Family Fun Night at the YMCA. These programs and activities directly impact students and provide resources and connections to their communities that allow them to be successful in our schools. Part of the FACT team includes our Mckinney-Vento Liaison. Tara is our liaison, and she works with families who are homeless, students who are unaccompanied, and children who are in foster care. The purpose of the McKinney-Vento Act is to provide consistency for students who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. In the 2018-19 school year, we had just under 300 students experiencing homelessness and 68 students who were unaccompanied or essentially living without adult support. These students are in every school in Albany, and Tara and the FACT team help ensure they are enrolled quickly, receive consistent access to services regardless of their living situation, and have access to basic resources such as food, clothing, and school supplies. Please join me in appreciation of the extensive work that is done and the support that is provided to families in Albany by the FACT team. Each of them work tirelessly with our schools to help ensure students and families have their basic needs met, as well as providing advocacy and resource services. FACT supports every student in GAPS without need for eligibility, and in this way, the team has already served hundreds of families this year. Please join me on March 17th for FACT Appreciation Day, when we will express our gratitude district-wide for the hard work and dedication of this team. And I have one of our FACT team members is here with us tonight, and I just would like to introduce Rebecca Seltz. So she's on here somewhere and hoping she can wave. Thank you very much for the opportunity to let me share a little bit about our team. They're one of my favorite parts about working in this district.
And Sonia, you may not have seen, but Tara's also on the call.
Oh, wonderful.
We have a twofer.
Yay.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
I think you worded it very well when you say it's a hidden gem that a lot of people I don't think are aware of all the work that goes on there. And it's so, so much appreciated by so many of our students and families and all of us. So I appreciate you taking the time to share all the information, because I think there are a lot of people out there that aren't aware of the services that are being provided. So thank you for that, coming tonight and sharing that with all of us.
Definitely.
And for bringing some of the staff.
Yep.
And they're little. Director Roach.
I just want to echo some of the things I said when the Welcome Center visited us recently, that I love FACT so much, and I did a summer project several years ago, in fact, was so instrumental in helping us reach out to families. They've built that trust with our families. Staff cannot do the job that they do without you. And you are absolutely critical to our district and to helping to meet the needs of our families, particularly those who are underserved. And so I just say kudos to you, and you deserve all the praise and reward that we could possibly offer. So I wish I had a handful of candy to give you that all the fact trainers go around and give to the staff when they're doing their trainings in the schools. But candy wouldn't be nearly enough to show our appreciation to you. So thank you.
Well, I just want to say that we love our jobs, and we couldn't do it without the teamwork of all the staff across the district. That's where our referrals come from, and it's from the big hearts of the staff and their care and concern for the students and the families.
Oh, thank you guys again for joining us tonight and taking time out of your evening. And I know we're running a little late this evening, so we appreciate you hanging with us.
Thank you.
All right, I think we had one item. Superintendent Goff, did we have one item we wanted to bump up really quick in the agenda for tonight?
Yes, Chair Butzner, I would recommend that we move up item M3, which is this year's school calendar conversation. We have some folks waiting in the waiting room who are coming in, our union presidents, and then Ken Gilbert from our administrative team to help with this item. And then Executive Director Larry, you and I did not speak about, were you going to speak to it? You want me to speak to it? I care not.
Well,
you're muted.
Yeah, I know. Taking me a minute to get to the microphone. You probably are more versed in it than I am. I will tell you, Superintendent Goff, this is all changing so fast. I did add a slide at the end of the slideshow that might be helpful. So as you go through Plan A and Plan B, you might take a look at that last one in which I've laid them side by side.
Perfect. I was wondering if it was just a slide showing someone looking chaotic.
And just to clarify for the board members, so we're moving M3 up, which was actually under new business this evening, and it will require our approval tonight or decision making tonight. So just be prepared for that as we get through this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Butzner. And let me start with that, why this is a new item, and then why it takes action, needs action tonight. You do not have another March board meeting, and the action for which this item first landed on the agenda was to address the fact that we don't have a common grading day right now for K-12 for third quarter. So we had, when we made the most recent calendar adjustments, which also then when the board votes on calendar changes, which you do on the days that we have that we add off for students related to staff development, professional learning, et cetera. When you make those changes, we bring them before you, and typically we try to have one common day off. We missed the fact that we didn't have elementary and middle and high school aligned. And so when we realized that we had missed that, we put it on this board agenda as an item, and you'll see where that comes into play on calendar A. Then with the announcement from the governor on Friday, we spent Friday meeting with our principals and the union presidents, and again repeatedly throughout the day, and then decided that what we wanted to put forth to the board based on what we heard from the governor was a second calendar for you to consider. at the same time, so that you're not having to change the calendar again later. So I'll walk you through calendar A and B quickly. It should not take long. So calendar A is the calendar that you have in your packet, which indicates, keeps steady these markers that were already in place. March 18th and 19th would be the K-5 teacher prep for hybrid transition. We have spring break. And then on March 29th, both AOS and all of our elementary K through 2 students start their first day of in-person hybrid, which is really exciting. Then in April, which is later that week, is April 1st on Thursday, our 3rd through 5th grade students are scheduled right now to come back in-person hybrid. And this is what's different than what we've discussed before. And that is that the 9th would become a K through 12th grade grading day. Right now, some of our kids have the 16th as a grading day. I think that's elementary school currently has the 16th as their day off for the grading day. And this would actually pull all of K-12 together on the 9th. And that's the only change to the calendar that you've already seen. The 12th and the 13th are currently scheduled for 6th through 12th grade teacher prep for their transition into hybrid. The 15th and the 16th are the first days of in-person for 6th and 9th graders, depending on the 9th graders' last names. The 19th is the first day of in-person hybrid for the rest of middle school and high school. And then, and then the additional add to this that also came as we were discussing the calendar change with our administrators, was looking at the 23rd, which is currently marked as a staff development day, to a no school day. And Executive Director Larry, I just want to verify, is that only for AOS?
Yes.
That is a change, right? So that would only be a change for students at AOS and for staff at AOS. That's calendar A. So calendar B, based on what the governor announced on Friday, we had a conversation about how could we potentially accelerate students' return. If the governor is overall seeing across the state a comfort level with return dates within the time frame that we had already set, then we felt that that was reassuring to us to be able to move some students in more quickly. Remember, our MOU already focuses on the 29th for what we've discussed already, which is teacher vaccination, all staff vaccination who want it, which is about 88% of our staff, I think. And then the 2-week waiting period, unfortunately, that then hits spring break. And so our littles start back on the 29th. But as we are taking a look at that, what we really felt was, are there places that we could look for some earlier returns if we don't have the same level of concern with the metrics and what we were seeing at the time that we set those dates? We looked at it for all grade levels. What we saw as a barrier at the high school level, AOS wouldn't really change. So it's really the 2 comprehensive high schools. The schedule is one significant barrier at the high school level. But the thing that really kind of pushed us over the decision-making point is what we also touched on earlier, which is the keys to West Albany High School get handed over to us on April 13th, which is awesome. And part of what's been really great about the last several weeks is that not having kids at West has allowed all of the contractors to be wherever they need to be without restrictions on classrooms being used, et cetera. What we didn't want to do if we accelerated and moved high school kids back earlier was to get kids all set up, teachers in classrooms and learning spaces all set up in one part of the school, and then have them move once the rest of the school is opened up. So that really limited us on what we were doing with high schools. So these are the dates for calendar B where you would see changes. And those changes I want you to note are with 3rd through 5th grade and then our middle school kids primarily. So 18th and 19th would still be the K-5 teacher prep for the transition. On the 19th, there would be the grading day for 6th through 8th grade would happen on the 19th, which means that there would be no K through 8 students attending school on the 19th. Then we'd have spring break on the 29th, which is Monday. Not only would we have AOS and K through 2 in their first day of in-person hybrid, we would have 3-5 and CDL, which they're already scheduled to be in, but we would have our 6th through 8th grade teachers in their first of 2 back-to-back days of preparation for the hybrid transition. The next day, which is Tuesday, rather than the Thursday, April 1st, on Tuesday, the 30th, we would bring 3rd through 5th grade in for in-person hybrid. So it would just be a couple days earlier for 3rd through 5th grade. On April 1st, our middle school kids would still be in comprehensive distance learning for both the 1st and the 2nd. So that whole first week back after spring break, our middle school students would not shift out of CDL yet. And on that Friday after spring break, it would be the K through 5 grading day. So that's one of the big differences with this calendar too. Now the grading days are not in common. Now they're all different. So you'll see that change. On the 5th, that's when 6th grade would start. So that moves our middle school students up 2 full weeks, where they would be starting 2 weeks ahead of what the current calendar says, or what calendar A says, and what we just reviewed. So 6th graders would start on Monday the 5th, and 7th and 8th graders would start their first day of in-person on Tuesday the 6th. April 9th would be the 9th through 12th grade grading day. The 12th and the 13th then would be the 9th through 12th prep for transition, and the rest of those dates look the same as they did in calendar A because it's high school related. And then the mystery slide is small but important to read. So this just lines calendar A and calendar B up to you, up for you in a lot of text. I apologize for that we didn't have time to make the visual calendar for you because we were working on this in the last, 15 work hours and or more, I guess more than that, but we didn't have time to make the visual for you. We'd be happy to answer your questions, but first, what I'd like to do is just give an opportunity for each of the union presidents to talk about what their thoughts are with calendar A or calendar B, and just provide the board feedback about process and how the process has worked, and then same for Principal Gilbert.
Helen, are you going to go first, or is it going to be me? No, I'll go first. It's fine.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So thank you, Madam Chair and the Board of Directors, for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I also appreciate Superintendent Goff for extending the invitation because I really wish to be clear with our teachers, our classified staff, and our wider community regarding the degree of collaboration this year has encouraged, especially around issues like this one. I'm exceptionally grateful for the relationships we've been able to build as association leaders and as district leaders across the table. In that collaboration, we are able to keep students centered in our work and our conversations. And for me, coming from Albany Option School, that's really, really important. What has been frustrating to me as an association leader around issues like this one is the constant shifting of the goalposts by the governor. Governor Brown has created an environment in which she has shifted the blame from herself to every local school community. And every time she announces a new change, she does little to engender goodwill among the school leaders, staff, and students she purports to serve. Every change sends us back to the table, and while I really do value our relationship, it's hard on our teachers, as they are the ones expected to enact those changes along with other school staff. It's hard on them too. It's hard on our students to follow those changes, and it's difficult for our families to respond and react every time that this happens. We have plans in place regarding return to instruction, and I believe those plans are good ones. Teachers and staff have had the opportunity to get vaccinated, and we do want to be back in our classrooms. We want to be back with our students.
I think of my dear mentor and high school English teacher, Michelle Shigemasa. I asked Shig once what her favorite place was, and imagine my surprise as a high school junior to find out it was her classroom. I remember she said it made her happy as a clam to be with her students, and many of us feel the same way, but we want to do it safely. And I really do think it behooves us now to go slow so we can go fast once we return. I've received a lot of feedback over this over the last couple of days from our certified staff, and especially our teachers at the middle level. It turns out many of our teachers already have plans for those classes, for their classes on those days ahead of the spring break, and some schools have even planned events for students on those days. It's very clear to me that changing our return plans will increase teacher workload. I would remind the board that the dates that are being considered are next week. That is not a lot of time in a school system such as ours. Again, I would express my particular gratitude for the hard work of Superintendent Goff, Assistant Superintendent Harlan, Director Larry, Mr. Scherzinger, and Director Buttram, as well as my sister-in-arms, Classified President Helen Jacobs. We have tried really hard this year as a team to do what's best for Albany students. And again, I appreciate being able to talk to you guys about the calendar and this issue in particular. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Lindsay. Helen?
Madam Chair and Board Directors, thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. And thank you, Superintendent, for giving us invite. It has been very clear to me that we need to make it clear that the collaborative relationship that we've continued to have with our district has been extremely important. We've had way more meetings than I've ever expected. And certainly being somebody who's been 10 years as the president of this classified association, I would have never thought we'd be out as long as we have. However, we have, and safety has been the priority of our district, which has made it good because that is the important thing. Our students and our staff need to be safe and be the priority. The district has also made it a priority to make sure to try to serve every student to the best of their ability. With that being said, it's been extremely frustrating to have the governor keep moving things around, making it more difficult, making it difficult for our communities, our families, and our students and our staff. Our leadership has worked extremely hard to meet those goals, and I think it's unfair the way she has operated and made demands on us all. Our classified staff have worked extremely hard to make sure that the classrooms are ready and prepared. Our bus drivers are out there, and they have been working since day one. And at this point, they are out there doing limited in-person and delivering lunches and doing it happily because they get to see students. We all want to be back. I want the masks off. I want to be able to give high five to kids. I want to be able to do the things we need to do. With that being said, I do have concerns about us moving forward with the calendar and making changes so quickly. But if this is what's best for our students, we will do everything we can to support it. But I want you to be considerate in the fact that this is a difficult task for our staff to be able to take on, and I have great concerns about the workload. Sorry. I want to say that I am so pleased and happy with the hard work the Superintendent Goff has done. She is an amazing person and has showed the care and the willingness to work with us. Assistant Superintendent Harlan, thank you for everything you do for us, and your willingness to meet with us and have good strategies and good conversations. Mr. Larry, thank you also. Mr. Strateger, thank you. And Mr. Buttram, thank you. You guys have made it much, much better for us to make good decisions for our kids that need to be the priority. I also want to say thank you to Lindsay. She is an amazing president for the teachers. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Thank you, Helen. And Mr. Gilbert.
Good evening, board and everyone else. I would also like to thank Superintendent Goff for the invitation to come this evening and say a few words. It's interesting because I haven't talked to Helen or Lindsay, but share some very similar sentiments around our governor, and I don't want her job, just like I don't want Superintendent Goff or Assistant Superintendent Harlan's jobs either. However, I will say that the reason I was going to bring her name up is because I think it's pertinent to this conversation about process and communication and collaboration. When our governor made an announcement on a Friday that we knew, I think our superintendent knew was going to stir up some conversation, I will say. That's really tough to try to get people together, especially when the following Monday we have a board meeting and information is going to, questions are going to be asked. And so I think it was amazing that Superintendent Goff and Assistant Superintendent Harlan pulled the administrators together a couple times during the day Friday, more than a couple times in some cases, and let us know what was going on. Let us know about some potential a potential schedule proposal. Let us give some feedback. There were some very hard conversations that happened on Friday. It actually was one of the toughest days I've had in my career. And in the end, it was really good. That's not easy to do for their part because they had to communicate with a lot of different groups. And sometimes we lose sight of that when we're looking at our own perspective. Me as a building administrator forget that they may be, they are communicating with a lot of different stakeholders and trying to put this stuff together. So I think we as building administrators really appreciated the communication on Friday and collaboration of what might possibly happen. I also really appreciate the leadership that we heard in one of the tough conversations, and this was kind of in a smaller admin group, about what's best for students as we move forward. And Helen mentioned this a little bit also. And also, what doesn't put our staff over the edge. And so it's really important that we think about both those things, but with the big goal in mind of what's good for our students, because that's why we're here. And I think our superintendent and assistant superintendent helped lead a group that I was in through that conversation, which was a tough conversation, but we got through it. And if calendar B ends up what you guys decide, I think there was some good work and thought put into that, and I appreciate their leadership in that part.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, all three of you, for being here and speaking tonight and being so well prepared. I'm actually, I can tell you that I apologize for not touching base with you to make sure you had what you needed. It has been a whirlwind of a couple days, so thank you. So board members, really just this is a decision that you can consider. We don't have language in your packet around this. The language would be I move to direct staff to implement calendar A, or to direct staff to implement calendar B. And then obviously you have a lot of people here who can answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
I know for myself, I want to clarify that the calendar B option, we fully expect to be able to implement a 2-week earlier transition for that middle school group. We've had those conversations with all of the administrators and people that need to make that happen for us, and they believe they can make that happen for us.
So I'll answer the part about, yes, we've had the conversations with all of those groups, definitely. But I don't want to speak on behalf of the administrators as far as them being able to make it happen. I'll let Ken answer that.
Sorry. Oh boy. Thank you for the question. I can't speak for elementary and high school, honestly, because I have not had a whole lot of not really any conversation other than our big group meeting on Friday. As somebody said earlier, I believe it was Lindsay, the schedule change, the calendar B proposal really has I think the biggest impact on middle school. And I know there is, I think there is concern at the admin level about a sped up timeline and getting that done. I also know that the middle school admin is up for the challenge if that's what the board decides, and you know, the things that we are dealing with are more logistical things and just getting plans in place, things like that, which yeah, we will jump into that challenge and be ready to go if that's the way the board chooses.
I think I'd add to that I mean, it's hard on middle school staff and all of them, regardless of what role they're in, to accelerate a time frame by 2 weeks that would lead to changes for them a week from this Friday. So it is a big ask to do. And I deeply appreciate how everybody has leaned into the conversation. And I don't doubt that people can do the work, but it means changes. It means that the middle school third quarter will end early, markedly early. So that's why you see that middle school grading day on the 1st of April, so much earlier. It means that, which means that curricular plans that middle school teachers may have put in place won't follow the same path that they had planned to follow. I just think it certainly means for everybody who works in the facilities of the middle schools that they've got much less time to get them into shape. So any teamwork that might be taking place to get the elementary schools prepped first so that they are ready to go on the 29th, it leads to a much more abbreviated time frame to then get the middle schools prepped next. So there are strains that will happen within the system to accelerate by this 2 weeks. And I think that's part of why you hear in each of my colleagues' concerns I would share the concern with the time frame. I would have loved to have heard this from the governor 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, but it's very hard to hear in March an expectation for March, and to be able to pivot a 21 school system with 9,200 students in it and staff. So I think that's part of what's difficult.
Okay. Director Roach.
It's a lot to think about right here. I used the term earlier that we can't let perfect be the enemy of good, and that I would argue both are good plans. They're definitely not perfect. And my couple of thoughts. One is I was leaning towards calendar B because one, from a teacher equity standpoint, to have teachers starting with in person and the hybrid model more closely together seems more sense of teachers working together. From a second point is, as an educator myself, if I had one more day with kids, like the growth that can happen, the relationships that can be built, the routines that can be established. I really like, if principals are saying that there's a real stress in making this happen, I'm willing to go with calendar A, but I want, if we're putting kids in school, let's get kids in school. And I'm really leaning towards calendar B, but I can certainly be swayed if the building administrators are saying that it's just too much of a strain on the staff. I guess that didn't really answer anything, but I'm trying.
Thank you. Director Ward.
Thank you, Ken and Lindsay and Helen, for being here late on a school night. I see, looking at Ken's picture next to Russ Buttrum's picture, that by the time we have our next meeting, I need to both shave my head and grow my beard. There's definitely, a look that's going on here. I just really appreciate you being here with us. I think we all share our frustration with the timing of the governor's announcements that have come out throughout this. It highlights some of what we were talking about earlier in the meeting about how quickly things change and how quickly we've had to pivot throughout this whole pandemic. So I want you to know that I have heard what you said. However, I am leaning towards calendar B for a few reasons. One, we know there is a real appetite in our community to get our kids back into school as quickly as possible. And this is a way of addressing that need that's been voiced by a fairly sizable percentage of our community. I would point out 2 weeks is a quick transition time. I totally give you that. But that has been the amount of time that we've kind of been talking about all along. Back in the fall when we said, once we hit the metrics, then we anticipate it would be 2 weeks before we would go to this hybrid model. And and that would have been quick then, and it would have been quick now. But that's kind of the pace of things. But the reason I'm really leaning towards calendar B is because of the population of students that we're talking about. And middle school, as they often are really stuck in the middle. They're not able to go back to school as early as our elementary school students because of the phased-in approach. And they don't have the outlets that our high school students have in terms of athletics and activities. And there are many students that will opt to stay in distance learning, but there are many that are just missing their friends and so sick of being stuck at home with their mother all day. I mean, I'm sure there are those out there, not mine, of course, but that just really need to get back into school. And if we can facilitate this, I think it's in their best interest to do that.
Thank you. Director Aganaga and LJ, I do see you also. So as people are raising their hands in board book, I'm just kind of going in order of those that I'm seeing. So Director Aganaga, you are up next.
Good evening, and thank you for the representatives of being here tonight. I do appreciate that. Jennifer, I have been working on my beard to catch up to these gentlemen, and Russ, I'm working on putting my saber on the wall too for you. But it kind of reminds me of Semper Gumby. Like Jen said, we were only looking out. Did we make the metrics this week? Did we make it this week? And then we would fail again. So I believe you guys are hardy. I know transportation is hardy. Those folks, transportation can do anything at a drop of a dime. And I think the rest of the district would follow them. And when we're prepared to make a motion, I would be happy to.
Thank you. LJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some input from a student perspective, even though neither calendar really affects me as an upperclassman in high school. I just want to echo what Director Ward and Director Roach said. This whole time through distance learning, it's been students first, students first, students first. Let's get them back to school. And I know from the teachers I've talked to, they want to be back just as much as any student. So as a student, I would lean towards be more, even if it doesn't affect me, getting kids back in the classroom is the most important issue at hand right now. So it would be very awesome, even just to get the littles back at this point. So as a student, I would lean more towards me.
Thank you. Vice Chair Thompson.
Yeah, just to offer my, this was a great discussion and a great point having the associations here and the middle school principal here, just highlighting how difficult this is. I hope at 9:45 there's still people watching, or they'll watch it later, because it is difficult. It's no lie. These are professionals, but I'm at this point I'm going with B as well. It's time, but it's not easy, and this was a good discussion highlighting that the challenges that we have faced all along. So I thank everybody.
Well, thanks everyone for the input. I do want to focus on, I know we've had a lot of conversations around that calendar B, and we did hear earlier from some folks about the challenges with that, and we're not at all not hearing those, and we do hear those, and we do know it's a quick turnaround. And what we appreciate more than anything is knowing that part of the reason you all are here is because you have agreed to being willing to entertain either of those two calendars and be able to make it work for the kids. And so we greatly appreciate that. We do hear the challenges, and I think that we will work very hard, and our district administrators will work very hard to help in every way possible to make sure that regardless of which calendar we go with, that we can assist all of those teams and all those groups in being able to make it work. So we appreciate you guys being here and sharing those concerns as well. I don't remember who said it. I think it was Director Roach. The hard part is neither one of them are perfect calendars and ideal, unfortunately. But we do, I think I have heard from most of the voices on the board that it feels like it's kind of been that time to start moving some things forward, even if it's a good couple weeks. That's a couple weeks for those kids in the classroom. So at this point, I'm not seeing anyone else that has any hands raised. So what we do need to do is entertain a motion at this point for the calendar. Director Aganaga.
Do you want me to, are we looking at the action requested, or are we suggesting calendar B?
Because you did not have both calendars at the time
Yeah,
that
I was
action
like-
was requested. So
it's not on there. You get to make one up.
All right, here we go. Madam Chair, I'd like to propose a motion to have staff adopt calendar B for our forward moving plan.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table for our district staff to adopt calendar option B as we move forward. Director Roach.
Aye.
Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Director Ward.
Aye.
LJ.
Aye.
Esperanza has left our meeting, so she is not here to vote on this one, but I also vote aye, so that new calendar Option B passes unanimously. Again, we greatly appreciate everyone's conversations so quickly since last Friday, and the willingness of people to share the concerns, but also find ways in which we can implement that calendar. So thank you for that.
Chair Butzner,
Yeah.
I did 2 really quick things. I'll make them really quick. One is earlier on, Director Ward was talking about how things change quickly, and that she hopes that the people listening, the community members listening, give a little grace to that change. And this may be another one of those times that will happen. And so thank you, Director Ward, for saying that earlier, but just kind of that reminder of this is a little bit of a quicker transition, and there may be a few things that are a little bumpy. So I just want to bring that up. And then the second thing is, just for the record, when this meeting started, Mr. Buttram and I were both very clean shaven, but 3 hours ago, this is what has happened. So thank you all.
Oh, Ken, we're going to have you join more of our meetings, I think.
Touche, Mr. Gilbert, touche.
Thank you all for joining us. Have a good evening if you don't hang out with us for the rest of the meeting. All right. All right, moving us into our agenda, we have quite a few things. We are moving into our comments from the public. We still have consent agendas. We've got 1 old business item and then several new business items. I just want to take a quick poll very quickly before we do comments from the public and move on. Do we need a 10-minute break, or do we want to power through? Power through is what I'm seeing from most. Does anybody have? Okay, here's the thing. Worst case scenario, you need to turn your camera off and take a potty break, go for it. But otherwise, we're gonna keep moving through. Okay, so we are moving into public comments, and we will be reading through these. Bear with us as some of these are a little challenging to read, but we will do our best here online. And I just want to reiterate something we mentioned earlier in the evening, but for those that are still hanging out with us, keep in mind our comments to the public come in right now. We're accepting those until noon on the day of the meeting. And we are accepting those in writing. We are reading them on behalf of those folks that submit those. And as we move forward with our in-person meetings, we do want to remind people that we still are seeing all of the letters that are coming in. We do read all of those. We don't put any aside, pick and choose which ones are read. Any that we receive by that deadline come through the process. The exception to that rule is if we have any kind of negative or complaint type issues directed at an individual, just as we would in our personal meetings based on our board policy, we would ask for those comments to not be said in a board meeting. And so therefore we may restrict some of those comments being made as well here. And we will follow up with those folks if and when we remove anything from public comment. So I will go ahead, and I think we said we have how many? 7?
Yeah.
7 public comments. We do limit them to 3 minutes. So even though we're reading them, if we can't read them in 3 minutes, we will stop at the end of 3 minutes and make note of the fact that the full comment will be in our board minutes for other people to read later. Director Thompson, do you want me to start, or do you want to go ahead?
I can read. I can read.
Perfect. I will let you go, and if you want to take a break at some point along the way, let me know and I'll take over.
Okay. Hang on. Let me find my board book again. Okay. I'm unmuted. Okay. Public comment number 1, Cody Welch, Albany, Oregon 97322. My name is Cody Welch. I have a daughter that goes to the 1st grade at Lafayette Elementary School. I'm writing you because what you, the board members, are doing to the kids is wrong and unethical. We as a community are stretched to the breaking point. It seems as most of the teachers in the district do not want to go back to work due to a high-risk atmosphere. Please explain to the community why teachers are not essential and have the choice if they want to work. Online schooling is not working and the children's grades are proving that. You told us that the children will be returning to in-school learning after Christmas break and then the first part of February. That didn't happen. Great job disappointing thousands of children. Then Governor Brown and the CDC said it's okay to open schools. A month later, you still have not opened schools. You keep telling the community that once the governor said schools could open, you would do so. You hid behind Kate Brown, but when she gave the okay, you said the district is not ready to reopen. Why is this? Is it because you did not take the time to figure out how to reopen the schools while the governor said they could not? Or is it the 2018 Golden lawsuit? If that is the case, shame on you for taking it out on our children. I know my taxes still went to paying all your wages during the shutdown. What were you doing? Now you're saying that schools will open March 29th. So the teachers, so the teachers and racially injustice children can get vaccinated. According to your 2018-2019 annual report, there's less than 2% African Americans in the district and 21% Hispanic. How many teachers are not going to get the vaccine? How many parents are not going to get their children vaccinated? This is a stalling tactic used by your board members and teachers so you do not have to return to the schools. You as school board members should be leaders in the community, but all you're doing is spreading fear by sending district-wide emails, texts, and calls saying there has been a positive case within the district. You are also causing a racial divide within the community by saying anything about social injustice. I've been told by students are allowed to wear BLM masks during sports and practice, but a football coach told a player to turn his Trump mask inside out or get off the field. How is that equal? Whenever you ask a question on your GAPS Facebook page, if it is something that anyone does not agree with, staff members of GAPS gang up on the person as asking the question. Or your admin for that page delete the comment. You do this to try to make your district look good, even though you know it is in distress. I've got way past 3 minutes on this. I'm going to go to public comment number 2. Samantha Sheely, Albany, Oregon 97321. I'm sure we are all tired of hearing that we are living in unprecedented times. However, that doesn't change the fact that due to the pandemic, we have been thrust into previously unexplored territory and forced to navigate new challenges. During these times, our district has been incredibly fortunate to have leaders that have negotiated the twists and turns in their way with strength, equity, and flexibility. The superintendent and assistant superintendent have provided our district with structure and guidance based on scientific evidence while adhering to constantly changing guidelines and directives from the state. We are not a private school. We are not a small district, and thus we are under completely different restrictions and guidelines. Complaining will not speed things up. We are already scheduled to begin in-person instruction ahead of many other districts that are under similar restrictions. I am grateful to all of our district leaders and staff who have rallied around our children and their families to ensure safe and equitable solutions to the educational challenges of these times. What you have done with such limited resources has been nothing short of amazing. When the shutdown initially occurred, our district immediately responded by establishing routes to distribute free meals which have continued and increased throughout the pandemic. They set up read alouds, social times, supply distributions, and ensured access to Wi-Fi and computers. The staff has worked tirelessly to set up and maintain virtual classrooms and support systems while learning new systems and unfamiliar platforms. We have all had to learn and grow as well as navigate these new approaches. On various levels, we have risen to meet the challenges presented. When I consider the fact that I have only witnessed a fraction of the effort that has gone into coordinating, distributing, and maintaining these resources, I find myself profoundly grateful to those who have forged the path so that others could be supported on their journey. Thank you for amazing leadership during these incredibly difficult times. Sincerely, Samantha Sheely. Public comment number 3, Alyssa Maysel, Albany, Oregon 97321. Good evening, board members. I am writing to you as a community member, a parent of children in the GAPS school system, and a GAPS teacher. I am writing today because I want to extend my support for our assistant superintendent, and our district administration. I have heard so many negative things said about our superintendent, assistant superintendent, and all district administration and the decisions they are making, and I am done listening to it all. I speak up when I hear something negative, but I'm tired of reading about it on social media or in the newspaper comments. I'm tired of our voices, the ones in support, not being heard. Our district administration, specifically Superintendent Goff and Assistant Superintendent Harlan, are doing a wonderful job. From making hard decisions to their work with equity to the success they have brought to GAPS, they always make their decisions based on the students first, and that is so important. I fully support them and what they bring to the table and the changes they are making for our students and what they are doing for our district. There are so many other people out there in this community who believe the same, and our voices cannot be silenced by the ones who do not believe this. Please know that we, the supporters, are out here in Albany, and that the naysayers don't get to be the only ones heard. Thank you for all your hard work, Mrs. Goff and Mrs. Harlan, the directors of elementary and secondary education, Ms. Luthra and Ms. Tatum, and Mrs. Beltran, the principal of my kid's school. You are all appreciated. Thank you. Public comment number 4, Stephanie Cox, Albany, Oregon 97322. Dear board members and Superintendent Goff, please consider the original calendar for returning to hybrid and do not vote in the suggested calendar that would return middle school and high school students to school sooner than April 19th. Many of my students have shared their families' out-of-state travel plans for spring break. By forcing students to return to hybrid only 1 week after spring break, we are not allowing for a 2-week quarantine for students without them having to miss school. By maintaining the original hybrid start date, parentheses, April 19th for grades 6 through 12, students and their families can travel without having to quarantine from school upon their return. While the CDC is still not advising traveling across state lines for pleasure, many members of our community are ignoring this advice. I worry that they will bring back the virus to our schools. The district has a solid plan in place for returning to hybrid. Teachers and administrators have spent countless hours planning and replanning each time the calendar changes. Please allow schools to follow through with their thoughtful hybrid plans and do not rush this complicated process. Thank you for your time. Public comment number 5. Hang on. My name is, dear school board members, my name is Sarah Wilson. I am writing you as a concerned mother of 3 and a voice of many parents who are desperate for you, the board, to start demanding more of our district leadership. 363 days. Let that number sink in. 363 days, and our district leadership still has yet to reintroduce a single grade to the classroom. It is time. Time for you to stop cowering to lackluster efforts and begin advocating for the families you were elected to serve. GAP's leadership has failed our children. It began with the dull and unimaginative curriculum that were presented in the spring of 2020, which fell far below standards statewide. We watched as neighboring districts were able to nourish the ever so vital student-teacher relationship by allowing live and innovative engagement. Meanwhile, our students were sent a workbook and a weekly canned email. We were told by our superintendent that the spring curriculums were lacking due to time constraint and planning, so we gave grace. We gave such grace because we just knew that leadership would do better in the fall, and you assured us they would. Since September, efforts of district leadership have been seemingly more focused on providing the reasons why things can't be done instead of building efforts to prove that they can. They have continually adopted the stance of doing the absolute minimum required, all while lowering standards to mask their shortcomings. You, as board members, have supported this. You have spent countless instances during board meetings praising their shiftless efforts instead of pushing for more, instead of requiring a raising of the bar, instead of questioning each timeline, instead of advocating for better for our children. You use valuable time coddling the feelings of leadership. This year especially, their role does not allow for mediocrity. Your role is to hold them to the higher standard of efforts. They have proven that they will never do more for our children if you as a board do not start demanding they do. Repeatedly this school year, we've watched districts around us debunk all the can'ts that we have been fed by our leadership while simultaneously struggling to fill the void of the classroom at home. The grace we gave in the spring of 2020 has dwindled. As we look to the next school year, you must raise the bar. You as the board are our children's voice. It's time to start walking the walk. I beg of you, please start requiring more of our district leaders. It is just as much your job to get this right by the fall of 2021 as it is theirs. Sincerely, Sarah Wilson. Public comment number 6, Nicole Neuschwander, Albany, Oregon, 97321. Hang on. Last June, I submitted a public comment for the school board meeting urging GAPS to resume full-day in-person instruction with normal operations for the 2020-2021 school year. Sadly, I feel the need to submit a comment today, nearly a year later, with the same message being more urgent now than before. My immediate and extended families are strong supporters of GAPS and include retired and current GAP teachers, children in the GAP system, and concerned parents of those students. This year, unfortunately, our family includes less GAP students, as some have opted for private school next year based on the events of the current school year and the continued uncertainty and lack of faith in the district planning efforts for this spring and next fall. Judging by the number of other parents within our community that have made the same decision, GAP should be very concerned about this trend. I'm concerned that we're not seeing any communication, planning, or other actions to indicate that next school year will be full-time in person, including athletics and activities. Families and students need the assurances and advice and advanced communication thereof moving forward. The 2021-22 school year has to be open 100%. Our children depend on this and on you, the school board, to ensure that it happens. Sincerely, or thank you, Nicole Neuschwander. Public comment number 7, Jody Yoder, Albany, Oregon, 97321. I am writing as a parent in support of Superintendent Melissa Goff. This year has brought unprecedented historical moments, from a global pandemic to social unrest. I have seen Superintendent Goff make decisions in which there are no easy answers. She has also had to lead with her hands tied on some decisions due to restrictions from up the chain. In my interactions with Melissa this year, I have come to trust her leadership. I have seen Melissa show utmost character in her role as the superintendent in both in public and in private. She has remained humble in times of praise and concerned and eager to consider the voices of those who have disagreed with her decisions. These are my understanding of some of the events over the year. Spring. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of stress and fear in the community, as no one in the world knew the extent of the virus. Parents had to find childcare, students had to learn at home, jobs were uncertain. I thank Melissa for choosing to prioritize mental health, and the needs of families over academic rigor. Children can only learn as much as their mind can take, and it was clear she was looking to the needs of all children. I also saw her working with State Representative Bosshart to ensure access to internet services for students. Fall. As the virus continued to worsen, Superintendent Goff's decisions had to be made within the context of state rules and guidelines. As far as I know, there were no open public schools, and as Oregon leadership had chosen to be very restrictive in order to save as many lives as possible. Our board and superintendent gave regular updates on the metrics and state requirements, which we were never able to meet. But with each next date that was set, there was always a plan being made on how to implement it, and the plan was shared in a variety of ways. Winter. As research came out and vaccines became available, our state has allowed districts to begin opening schools. I understand that decisions were made by listening to the voice of all who were involved. Families with different concerns, student voices, and the diverse thoughts of teachers. I also understand that her reopening plan closely mirrors all the local schools and seeks to follow contracts and rules which could otherwise hurt the district. This gives me confidence that the state recommendations are being followed and there is no lack of effort or delay in our district. Superintendent Goff has shown herself to be a strong leader, student-centered and equity-minded. She values the voices of all community members, not only the ones who give their thoughts willingly, but the ones who have been overlooked. In addition to the pandemic, Superintendent Goff has led through political and racial unrest. I see her doing this with compassion and grace. I see her true heart as an educator as she seeks to provide training and continues to educate herself as well. I look forward to seeing her work in the district as our city comes out of this historic time. I think that's it.
Thank you for reading those. Okay. We are moving into consent agenda. We had personnel and minutes. Were there any questions or comments on the minutes or any personnel items from board members? Seeing none, those are approved. And then our old business, I believe, Assistant Superintendent Harlan, you have this one?
Yep. So Chair Butzner, members of the board, this is coming back to you as old business. If you remember last time, it is for contracts for our E-rate category 1, which is broadband service, and category 2, which is hardware. The broadband service in the district that expires at the end of this year, June 30th. And so this is the process that we use in order to go out for bid for a contract so that, of course, we don't lose service, broadband service in the district. We have a filing date of March 25th for E-rate. And remember, E-rate is the reimbursement mechanism that we have for things like technology and broadband service.
Okay, so we have 2 actions requested.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The first, to make a motion to approve the submission of both category 1 and category 2 as presented. And the second action that staff is requesting is to make a motion to approve the E-rate for category 1, the contract negotiations with LS Networks, who is the contract for the broadband service, and then the contract for hardwares with CDWG and CVE as listed.
Okay, so this is coming back as old business, but was there any conversation that still needed to occur from board members? Okay, not seeing any.
I'll make a motion to approve submission of E-rate Cat 1 and E-rate Cat 2 as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to approve submission of E-rate Cat 1 and E-rate Cat 2 as presented. Director Roach.
Aye.
Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Director Ward.
Aye.
I believe we lost our other student board member. It's a little late for them. So I also vote aye, so that one passes unanimously.
And I'll go ahead and make a second motion to approve E-rate Cat 1 contract negotiations with LS Networks and E-rate 2 contract negotiations with CDWG and CVE.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to approve E-rate Cat 1 contract negotiations with LS Networks and E-rate 2 contract negotiations with CDWG and CVE. Director Roach.
Aye.
Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Director Ward.
Aye.
I also vote aye. That one also passes unanimously. All right. Moving on to bond business and reports. We, I believe, have a change order request for West Albany. Director Butcham, are you taking this one? Oh, we can't hear you.
Yeah, so so David has just been let in, and
Russ, it looked like you were off mute, but we weren't hearing you.
yeah, that was odd. So David, maybe you could speak to the change order request.
Yes, thank you. We have before you change order 23. This is a typical change order that we do every month. It is for the PCOs, the individual scopes of work that we have contracted with the contractor to do. We've provided an explanation for each of those. They have been thoroughly vetted and through our review process, not only with HMK, but DLR and with facilities and Doug Pigman. And so we are recommending that you award this in the amount of $98,863.21. I don't know if you have any questions on any of the specific PCOs that I could answer.
Just for clarification again, because we always do this,
Yes.
these are all falling within our contingency fund
Yes.
for this particular item. And where are we at with the final contingency at this point?
We are, with this, we're out of contingency. And so we're going through, because we're at the end of the project, we're going through the various soft cost categories and looking to see if we have any money there that we could move to contingency for future change orders.
And we have how much time left on the project? Or how much percentage of the project left?
We about 7%, 8% of the project. We have roughly 3 months, 4 months left. They're supposed to be technically done on May 15th.
Okay. Questions from board members? Okay. I am not seeing any, so we will entertain a motion on this one, which is included in board book.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to award change order number 23 to Girding Builders in the amount of $98,863.21.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to award change order 023 for Girding Builders in the amount of $98,863.21. Director Roach.
Aye.
Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Director Ward.
Aye.
I also vote aye. So that one passes unanimously. We are looking at moving a couple of our items just because of time this evening. Superintendent Goff, did you have?
Yes, Chair Butzner, I would recommend that we pull both M1 and M6 off of this agenda for tonight. We will move those to next time. One is around unmanned, it's a drone one, I think. And and board policy, and then the other is one of 2 technology requests that'll come before you tonight. One of them we do need to discuss today, but the other we can wait until the April meeting.
So we have basically, it looks like M4 and M5 left for the evening. Is that correct? Or is M4 addressed?
M2, I think you need M2 as well.
2. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we will move into the contract extensions and renewals of M2. Director Larry.
Yes, Chair Butzner, members of the board, would request that even though this is brought as new business, that there be a motion to accept the contract extension and renewal recommendations by staff as discussed in executive session tonight.
Thank you. Were there any additional comments or questions about this item? No? Okay.
Motion to accept contract renewals and extensions as proposed by staff in executive session earlier this evening.
So we have a motion on the table to accept the contract extensions and renewals as presented in executive session earlier this evening. Director Roach.
Aye.
Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Director Ward.
Aye.
I also vote aye. This one passes unanimously. And
So Chair Butzner, that brings us to, M4, the school calendar. And just a note that now we're talking about next year's school calendar. So sorry that we're not doing it till 10:19 at night.
Yeah, and I'm chuckling because, you know, in a previous lifetime, I would have said we can never go into like March or April without next year's calendar in place. It's too late to make any calendar changes. That's only 6 months ahead. What we realized a couple of weeks ago is that we do not have a 21-22 school calendar in place. And so we don't have a first day of school established. We don't have, you know, any of those important dates established. And while it's getting late for this, we would typically have this adopted sometime in early February, probably. I know that there is some interest in discussing what the calendar might look like. What you have in the board packet is really a status quo calendar. So if we were just to say, hey, look, let's just keep the calendar the same, this is what it would look like. Understand that there may be some discussion, et cetera, and that you may or may not want to adopt a status quo calendar for next year. This is new business.
And this is something that even if we adopt this calendar now, as far as the base starting point, if things continue to shift and change, it could come back to us for a future discussion.
Oh, yeah. No, you can never change calendars.
Well, and I think that, did you want this adopted tonight, Mr. Larry?
I don't have a recommendation on that.
Okay.
Superintendent may have different feelings about that.
Okay. Well, I would just, as we stated earlier, if we are, I guess we will have to adopt a calendar. But I would, once adopted, I would just publish it with all kinds of disclaimers, like subject to change. Not only because we don't know what the pandemic COVID environment is going to be like come fall. But going back to what we talked about earlier, like I would really like for us to be able to think outside the box as far as what our instructional time looks like. And, Justin shared with me today, maybe with the rest of you as well, that money is being released for summer school. I mean, I just think we need to, summer school should be on the table. Year-round school should be on the table. 24/7 school should be on the table. Like all of these kind of temporal constraints, some of them arbitrary and outdated, that have dictated what instruction looks like. This is our opportunity to let them go and to really offer opportunities and alternatives for our students and our staff and our families that meet their needs and allow them to blossom. So I just don't want us to close any doors at this point.
Yeah, I understand that. And I would probably recommend, maybe at the next meeting, potentially adopting sort of a short-term and a long-term strategy. I do think that there will be an interest in, when is school going to start? And, we're making all kinds of assumptions that things are going to be back to whatever normal is. But heck, our ability to predict that stuff hasn't been great. So.
Yeah, I would just add, there's no need for action on this tonight. What we wanted to do is get a draft in front of you. The news about summer school is fantastic for us. So when we come back in April, unfortunately, it's a month from now that we would be coming back, but we'll be able to have to talk with you in greater depth about summer school when we have a longer amount of time within the board meeting.
And I do think it's also important that we try to at least get a basic baseline out there from the perspective of, we do have families that want to plan, both as part of our staff and students and their families, around any kind of possible, vacation times and things like that. And that is something that we heard with that moving target, especially for a starting date, is really challenging sometimes. So we definitely need to make that a priority to at least get a baseline schedule out there. But we can make some disclosure statements that I think are important along with it. Director Roach, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to echo what Director Ward was saying earlier. We had a great conversation about that this weekend, and I think that this is really an opportunity to be creative. And I'm nervous about putting out dates because we've seen people grasp onto things and really struggle with when those things have to be changed, regardless of how many asterisks are attached to it. So what that tells me is we need to get a team together as soon as possible and be thinking about these big ideas. And I want to think big about year-round school as well. I want to think about ways that we can get kids to reduce the opportunity for that summer slide we see with so many kids, particularly disadvantaged students who go into the summer and lose so much learning. Sorry, there's something really loud in the background. It's not me. Anyway, I think we need to think creatively, and we need to do that quickly so we can give some parameters of what it could look like. I'd love to be a part of that if Director Larry or Superintendent Goff, if you're putting together a team. I know Director Ward would love to be a part of that, because this is a really great opportunity that we have in front of us to get away from the status quo, which didn't work for everyone.
Thank you. Director Aganaga.
Well, this takes me back to January 2020 when we did this last time, and I wanted to go through June. I wanted school to go when we looked at this calendar, and you're like, Augie, you can't do it. It's 16 months away. And I was like, no, I've moved battalions overseas in like 6 weeks. So it brings us back to that, because that plan just kind of washed away when COVID hit. And I understand. I don't hold a grudge or anything, but I would be interested if the rest of the board would be interested in assigning staff to do investigation on extending school through the end of June, because we still have to go through negotiations, and then extending through the whole year, what kind of options we have. But I think we have to start working on it at some time. And unfortunately last year it got stumped away.
So it sounds like we don't actually need to do an approval this evening. It is presented as new business. It gives us some time to think this over, maybe make some plans with district staff for how we might move forward with the calendar, and we can bring it back to our next meeting. as old business, or we can still continue discussions at that point if needed. Sound good? Thank you, Director Larry, for putting that back on our plate. All right. And I think we have one last thing, which is M5 for Chromebook purchase.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So this is what happens when your earbuds don't last as long as the meeting. And I feel obligated to say I am here live and I'm not a cat. So tonight we are bringing you a recommendation. We are asking you to take actions on it this evening. The key thing is you have the memorandum in your package, but the key takeaways on this is 700 Chromebook computers that we need to finish out our one-to-one lining up with students, and to provide 3 spare computers into each classroom for students who have bring your own device or who come in who have dead batteries and those kinds of things. This is our accounting of what we have issued out throughout the year so far, and making sure that we have enough to get us through as we move into hybrid for the remainder of the year. And that's why we've brought it to you on relatively short notices, so we can get the order placed, so we can get the machines in, and so we can have them set up and ready to go. I do want to just mention briefly that item M6 that we are bumping to the next meeting is one that we have more time on, but it is another stack of Chromebooks, and that is to replace the Chromebooks that will be expiring. So it's similar hardware. I didn't want you to think we were sneaking up on you in little bites, but it's a separate, these are the second one are replacements. These are the new ones to get us to where we need to be to finish this school year. So it's 700 computers with our current estimate. We're still refining the price on this. And that's why we've put in staff's best estimate of $270 per machine. We're still working through the process of getting the rates nailed down. We don't expect it to come in anything over that, but we need to make that decision before the next board meeting. So we wanted to get pre-approval to do that now.
And are those part of the funding we received for the COVID funds, or where is the funding coming for those?
That's looking at Lisa right now because she's
nodding.
nodding.
I can speak on that. So we have ESSER 1 funds that were specifically for emergency funding. We also have a second round of ESSER 2 funds that are coming our way, and that's exactly the funding that we would use for things like this.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from board members? Not seeing any.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to pre-approve the 2020-21 Chromebook purchase as presented in the amount not to exceed $200,000.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to pre-approve the 2020-2021 Chromebook purchase as presented in an amount not to exceed $200,000. Director Roach.
Did you get that?
He said aye.
Nope.
So
I didn't hear it.
I had something in my mouth. Sorry. Aye.
I saw you chewing food. I thought you were saying aye, but I wasn't sure. Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Director Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
I also vote aye, so go ahead and order those Chromebooks.
Thank you very much.
And we will watch for your M6 presentation at the next meeting. Okay, any last items for the good of the group?
I would
Nothing?
applaud the district on Chromebooks that when I've known kids that have like accidentally damaged them, and it's not a big deal. They bring them to the school, they understand accidents happen, and his parents have been freaked out. So thank you to the district for really working with those parents on that.
Agreed. All right, everyone. Thank you for the long meeting. Good conversations. Enjoy the rest of your week. We are adjourning at 10:32 p.m.
Thank you all. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
That one might have been a record. 5 hours could be a record.